When this transfer student arrives at his new high school, he immediately becomes the king of all the girls' hearts. They're absolutely crazy about him and follow him everywhere. It's all because he's always number one at everything. He runs faster than anyone else and even puts an Olympic champion to shame. His cooking skills are also on another level. He can carve a rabbit out of an apple while the rest can only manage a pathetic imitation of a sashimi roll. And of course, the top school bullies can't let that slide. They shove the girls aside and surround him with their whole gang to settle the score. But just as their leader is about to land the first blow, Peter knocks him out cold with a single punch to the forehead, dropping him instantly. Another jerk tries to attack him, but Peter easily dodges every strike while taking out another guy with a sweep kick. Then one sneaky bastard pulls out a brick and attacks him from behind. But Peter sees even that coming and simply smashes the brick with his bare hand. Now all the girls are completely stunned and admire Peter even more. But none of them knows the truth. He's actually the greatest killer in history, hunted by the entire criminal underworld. Powerful organizations across the globe share a single deep-seated fear. They are all terrified of an individual named Peter. The shock lies in the fact that Peter is a senior citizen in his 60s, currently battling cancer. In a different location, our hero, who's wearing a mask, systematically dismantles a group of gang members. If he had just followed the rules, he would have remained history's most legendary killer. Due to his reckless actions, thousands of people are hunting him down. Now all the money he earned over decades of hard work is destined to be lost. Insanely tragic how the very gang he devoted his life to has turned against him. Despite being watched by 1,000 eyes, having thousands of killers trying to chase him down, Peter is still alive and kicking. As he removes his mask, we finally get to know the secret to his survival. Our hero has reverted back to his younger self. 3 months earlier, an elderly Peter tends to a dilapidated library while listening to a phone call. The caller expresses concern that he is missing medical appointments and failing to take his medication. Noting that the protagonist has only 3 months to live, Peter reflects that he is not afraid of death since he has lived a life of constant risk, having served his organization for 50 years without regret. Our boy feels he lived a fulfilling life, though he realizes he never even took a picture of himself. A beautiful young woman enters the library seeking middle school textbooks. Peter welcomes her and explains that he keeps stock ranging from 1960 to modern editions. When she mentions she is buying them for a younger sibling, the protagonist correctly deduces from her uniform and name tag that she is a third-year high school student. Surprised by his knowledge, she asks how he knows so much, and he tells her he is familiar with everything in the neighborhood. As he hands her a stack of books, she mentions she cannot afford them. To help her, Peter breaks the covers, technically making them used items. When she tries to stop him, he notes that her eyes reveal how much she cares for her sibling. He advises her to be kind to her loved ones while she has the chance, as that is the only way to live without regrets. When she asks if he has any, the protagonist admits he does, suddenly recalling his daughter crying and the reasons he entered such a brutal profession. He tells her it is not too late to turn back, right as she leaps onto the table with a knife, intent on killing him. Peter offers to let her go if she tells him everything. Confused as to how he predicted the attack, she learns he knew she was lying since he recognizes every student in the area, and the school she claimed to attend has not been open for 2 years. He adds that her perfume could not mask the scent of her blade, a smell he knows well from a lifetime of bloodshed. Realizing he has been toying with her, she tries to strike but hesitates, sensing that she is the one in danger, scaring her with a fierce look. Peter gives her the books, noting that he believes her about having a sibling. He realizes she is from the same orphanage he was raised in, and that the organization is still using the same methods. He explains that if she fails this mission, she will become the target. Multiple goons enter the library and open fire. Peter realizes the girl is being held hostage and cannot act freely, especially as he is weakened by his cancer. A goon punches him, mocking the idea that a legend is being brought down by an illness. Their leader, codenamed Octoman, explains that his boss is nervous about the protagonist, and that a bounty of $7.6 million, the exact amount in Peter's bank account, has been placed on his head. Octoman demands that he fight back as his men attack him relentlessly. Thinking they have knocked him out, the goons are surprised when Peter triggers a flare bomb. He uses the distraction to lure them toward the back door and escape, though he is bleeding badly. The girl watches in confusion as they pursue him. In a children's park, Peter lies dying in the rain, lamenting that he could not fight properly. He reflects on his life. While others lived normal milestones, he was killing wiretapping, acting as a spy in the cold, and surviving battlefields. After the new boss took over, the protagonist was deemed useless due to his cancer and age. He refuses to accept a life that amounts to nothing and dies while thinking of his crying daughter. At the hideout, the goons lament that Peter escaped, though they are motivated by the bounty. Suddenly, a man enters and comments that this is the first photo of him ever taken. The goons realize the man is Peter, yet he appears as a completely different person. He touches his face, realizing he has returned to his younger self. When they threaten him, Peter demands to see Octomon. After a goon attempts to punch him, the protagonist breaks the man's hand with ease and overwhelms another with multiple strikes. He muses that first-class assassins can turn anything into a weapon, proving his point by using an octopus leg to defeat a guard. He beats another goon and tosses him into a cooking pot. Peter picks up the photograph of his old self and acknowledges the $7.6 million bounty. Realizing this picture is the only proof of his former identity, he lights a cigarette and burns it. The old Peter is dead, and as he looks forward, he is ready to return to action. Inside a moving car, Octomon reflects on the failure to capture Peter. He knows that an official bounty announcement is coming soon and realizes they must act quickly. The man sitting beside him dismisses the urgency, claiming that Peter's cancer should have already claimed his life. However, Octomon insists that as their senior, the protagonist should at least leave his vast wealth behind for them before passing away. Back at the hideout, Peter opens the final door and realizes that Octomon has already escaped. He calls him lucky before moving on. Shortly after, Peter enters a public restroom where bystanders are stunned by his appearance, mistaking him for a model due to his surprisingly handsome and youthful face. As he looks into the mirror, he confirms that his body has fully reverted to its prime. His gunshot wound is gone, and the chronic pain from his cancer is entirely erased. He realizes this is not a dream, but reality. While the cause of this transformation remains unknown, he quickly concludes that the organization will never be able to recognize him in this new form, making it impossible for them to track the old version of Peter. His immediate concern shifts to finding clothes that fit his new frame. While in the restroom, Peter overhears two men discussing a massive advertising deal worth $80 million. One man reveals he exploited a young person by paying a pittance, even as the boy's mother lies on the brink of death without medical care. The CEO shows no remorse, instead boasting about using the money to buy luxury items like Louis Vuitton and Rolex to maintain the image of a successful executive. He believes these outward appearances are enough to manipulate young people into signing contracts blindly. Peter confronts them for smoking in a restricted area, but they respond with arrogance and aggression, striking him because they assume he is nothing more than a reckless youth. Although Peter initially walks away, he returns moments later after closing the door, having decided to handle the situation quickly. He effortlessly incapacitates one man with a single blow and disarms the other. He demonstrates superior combat awareness by pointing out flaws in how the knife is handled before overpowering the second man with ease. Having left both men defeated and terrified, he makes it clear through his presence alone that he is far beyond their comprehension, and he warns them to abandon their illegal activities. Afterward, Peter spends his remaining money on proper clothing. He reflects bitterly on how the organization he devoted his entire life to has turned against him, despite his only request being that they leave his money untouched. As he steps outside, he recalls his origins in a small church orphanage that, over the course of 50 years, evolved into the Glory Club, a massive global crime syndicate influencing politics and finance worldwide. This realization fills him with anger, and he decides that he will personally bring the organization to an end. Elsewhere, in a grim storage facility filled with butchered animals, a man confronts Octomon, questioning why he arrived alone. Octomon dismisses him as insignificant compared to legends like Peter. This provokes the man into criticizing the Glory Club for becoming arrogant and overdependent on the protagonist's legacy, warning that such confidence will lead to their downfall. Octomon shows no interest in the lecture and prepares to end the conversation, but the man reveals he has prepared an ambush, summoning several heavily built fighters from a top-tier private military company. Within moments, he effortlessly overwhelms them. Octomon demonstrates his strength as a rank B+ combatant specializing in full-body contortion and elite grappling skills, leaving the man terrified and helpless as he crushes his resistance. Returning to the hideout, Octomon inspects the aftermath of Peter's earlier encounter. He notices destroyed security systems and the absence of weapons, leading him to conclude that the protagonist himself was responsible. He struggles to understand how the old man not only survived but returned with enough strength to dismantle his forces. Upon discovering that one of his key subordinates has been killed, his urgency intensifies. He reminds the girl present that the bounty on Peter will soon be announced and orders her to report anything related to him immediately. Although she remembers how the protagonist once spared her life, she ultimately submits to the command of her boss. Soon after, an unexpected visitor casually enters the base of Octomon and sits down as if he belongs there. The butler questions how the intruder managed to get inside, but it is revealed that the visitor came unannounced with a personal matter to settle regarding a debt tied to the massive bounty on the head of the protagonist. This immediately puts Octomon on alert. He orders the area secured and begins analyzing the situation. He is unable to identify the young man or link him to any known faction within the Glory Club, leading him to speculate whether this individual could be an associate, an apprentice, or a hidden connection to Peter, despite knowing that the protagonist has always worked alone. Although he offers the intruder a chance to leave in exchange for information, he remains unaware of the truth standing right in front of him. The young man calmly rejects all options and presents his own, revealing in that moment that he himself is Peter, now reborn in a younger body and ready to confront the organization that betrayed him. Peter reveals that he killed the two minions, wearing a confident grin while Octomon stares at him in complete confusion. Because he cannot understand what the young man is talking about, Peter mocks his hearing before firmly repeating that he is responsible for their deaths. Octomon begins to question the situation, wondering if the kid is lying because if Peter truly killed them, then nothing about this encounter makes sense. He cannot grasp why someone claiming to be our boy would be attacking them in the first place. Giving the young man one final warning, the boss reminds him that they are armed with real firearms and tells him to stop pretending before demanding to know what connection he has to the protagonist. After noticing the girl from earlier gripping a knife, our protagonist decides the only way for Octomon to learn the truth is by forcing him to try and kill him. The villain finds the challenge amusing since killing has always been his specialty, so he orders his butler to shoot the young man while keeping him alive for questioning. Before the subordinate can pull the trigger, Peter flicks a chopstick through the man's neck with incredible precision, striking a fatal point and dropping him instantly. The girl is left speechless after witnessing such a flawless attack, realizing that although our boy appears to be around her age, nobody within the Glory Club possesses skills anywhere close to his level. She has never encountered anyone this talented anywhere in the world. Octomon admits the trick was impressive, and wonders which organization the young man belongs to, as someone with such ability should not remain unknown. He offers Peter a place within his organization, but the offer is merely a distraction as he pulls out a gun and begins firing. Peter reacts instantly by diving behind a nearby table. The boss smiles, believing the young man's lack of experience is showing. He assumes the kid thinks a wooden table can stop real bullets, and sees a perfect opportunity to pressure him into revealing everything he knows about our boy. He even considers recruiting him, as such a talented killer would be more useful alive than dead. As he prepares to continue shooting, Octomon notices that nobody is hiding behind the table. The liquid splattered across it is not blood, but chili oil. He searches the room, yet Peter is nowhere to be found, as if he has disappeared like a ghost. Looking upward, the villain spots the protagonist hanging from a ceiling railing. Before he can react, Peter spits spicy oil directly into his eyes, blinding him, and knocks the gun from his hand. Our boy's speed is so overwhelming that the guy cannot perceive the attacks before his neck is effortlessly snapped, sending him crashing to the floor. As he struggles to understand what happened, Octomon realizes he has never encountered anyone this terrifying, especially someone so young. His thoughts drift back to his childhood when his ruthless teacher taught him that every fighter must develop a final trump card because an enemy stronger than himself would eventually appear. The only way to overcome such an opponent would be to wait patiently until they lowered their guard before disrupting their momentum. Motivated by those teachings, the boss created a unique combat technique and became increasingly dangerous under his mentor's brutal guidance. Above all, the master warned him that the most dangerous mistake a fighter could make was turning his back on an enemy while believing the battle was already won. After mastering that technique as a child, Octomon was convinced he would never be defeated. Returning to the present, he opens his eyes, grabs Peter's leg, and wraps his body around him to choke him to death, reminding himself that he has survived in this profession for decades. Certain that the protagonist could never comprehend the battles he has endured, he prepares to finish the fight. However, Peter effortlessly escapes his grip and begins overwhelming him with relentless attacks. Confused, the villain notices something is wrong and looks down to discover he is not holding our boy, but the lifeless body of his own butler. His vision had been so impaired by the oil that he failed to distinguish the two. At that moment, Octomon accepts that after decades as a killer, he recognizes when death is inevitable. He concludes this mysterious young man may rival the 12 apostles or even surpass them. Desperate to survive, Octomon attempts to negotiate by grabbing the girl and offering her to Peter, treating her like a business transaction despite her resistance. The protagonist appears to accept, allowing the villain to believe he has escaped. Relieved, the boss hands over the girl and begins leaving the hideout, planning to uncover our boy's identity to take revenge later. Just as he turns his back, Peter calmly reminds him of the final lesson his teacher once taught him. Octomon freezes as the protagonist explains that the moment someone shows their back to an enemy while believing victory is secured is the exact moment they become as good as dead. Hearing those words, the guy realizes the terrifying truth that the teacher who trained him all those years ago was Peter himself. Before he can react, the protagonist reminds him that nobody who has seen the real Peter has lived to tell the story, then launches forward to kill the villain in a single strike. Elsewhere on a rooftop, a subordinate confirms Octomon is dead and reports that every security camera in the hideout was destroyed, leaving investigators with no clues. Nearby, a man balancing in a one-handed handstand struggles to understand how an old man who had been shot could recover in a day and eliminate 4 killers without leaving evidence. Landing on his feet, he notes that Peter now carries a bounty of $7.6 million, making him an SSS rank target. He orders every assassin in the Glory Club to receive the updated information as the organization will now begin hunting him. Throughout the city, pedestrians stare at a digital billboard displaying the bounty. The protagonist notices the announcement and realizes the organization has gone to great lengths to advertise the reward. Spotting members of the Glory Club collecting donations nearby, he concludes they will not need to search for him because he fully intends to find them first. Filled with determination, Peter sets his sights on destroying the Glory Club for good. Peter quickly realizes that taking down Glory Club alone is impossible. Because of this, he thinks of one specific person he already has in mind, a girl. Though he is still not entirely sure if he wants to work with her, he moves through a large men's washroom that looks more like a demolished junkyard, noting that more and more people seem to appear every time he returns. He searches around, muttering that the location sits somewhere between organ stealing and a hot, steamy night. Finally, he finds a door and opens it, revealing a basement with a long set of stairs leading downward. Looking around, our boy notes that the place is flashy as usual, with plenty of money spent to spice up the environment. Because everyone down there is blind, however, they cannot appreciate any of the expensive decorations or luxurious surroundings. Jaiwon points out that it has been quiet lately, but adds that she is handling some corpse cleanup today. In her mind, she figures our protagonist is a young man with no smell of alcohol on him, meaning he is not one of the outside villains, but she also knows he cannot be a simple petty thief. That is because she can smell the distinct scent of a killer's blood coming from him. Realizing the danger, she abruptly asks if Glory sent him and immediately attacks with a stick, pushing him backward. Calling him a little rat, she notes that he is pretty quick and warns him to watch his step before throwing the stick right at him. Our hero thinks about the expensive workplace and wonders what is going on. At the same time, he cannot help wondering how a blind person can fight like that. Ultimately realizing she is probably faking her blindness, our boy swiftly slams her hand down, honestly admitting that he is a little surprised because he did not expect Glory to employ someone this skilled in this day and age. He confesses that she actually got him a little spooked, but then notes that she is too soft, believing she feels hesitant about killing someone with a disability. Even so, he knows this confrontation can only end when one of them dies. Desperate, she calls out to her dog, Alexander, ordering him to bite the intruder. Instead of attacking, the pet walks right up to Peter and lets him pet it, leaving the woman completely shocked and surprised. Looking closely at him, she notices his skin is completely clean and the old man's smell has vanished. Wondering how this is possible, given he has only been doing this for about 30 minutes, she questions what he is trying to achieve. She demands to know if he is trying to uncover how the old man died, asking whether a gun, knife or poison was used, because she wants to become young again as well. Peter explains that he wants to follow in the old man's footsteps and, more importantly, find out how he died. When she asks if he intends to take on Glory entirely on his own, our protagonist confirms that is exactly his plan. He explains that he intends to enter the eye of the storm because Glory is desperate to kill him. The only way to create chaos inside the organization is to become a brand new killer for Glory Club. Shocked by the bold strategy, she calls his plan complete nonsense. Our hero already knows she will say this, but she soon realizes that because Peter is young again, no one will recognize him. If he infiltrates Glory's ranks as a killer in this condition, the entire organization will unknowingly plot his destruction right in front of him. Admitting that his way of thinking sometimes scares her, she warns him that the plan will not work. As someone senior to him, she reminds our protagonist that becoming a killer for Glory Club requires originating from Yongguang Orphanage. Since the old Peter may have belonged there, the new Peter is nothing more than a stranger, meaning he lacks the qualifications to become one of Glory's killers. Realizing there must be another way, our boy shifts his focus elsewhere. The scene moves to a massive school building named Xinyongguang High School, where students react with excitement as a new transfer student arrives. The girls are immediately surprised by his attractive appearance, wondering if he has really transferred to Xinyongguang High School after learning his name is Sungu Kim. Amazed by his glowing look, they remark that even his name sounds manly. Another student calls out, telling everyone to head to the assembly hall, and Peter follows along. Our protagonist notices that Xinyongguang High School is far from ordinary. Founded by the Glory Foundation, it poses as a normal high school from the outside, with girls even teasingly asking our boy what type of girls he likes, though one quickly clarifies she is not asking out of personal interest. When Peter spots a teacher, he tells her to control herself because he is a student, and she is an instructor. In reality, the true purpose of the school is to secretly operate an intensive killer course, which Peter realizes is his only pathway to becoming a killer for Glory Club. Inside a huge hall, students gather on a stage as achievements and awards are announced, including a girl who won 14 national dance competitions. Interrupting the proceedings, Peter recalls what he was told earlier about the killer class only accepting orphanage students, prompting him to ask if there is any other way to enter. He learns there is a rare exception, provided a candidate stands out enough to be accepted. Deciding to take that exact chance, our hero walks right onto the stage and taps the microphone. Introducing himself as the new transfer student, Sunji Kim, he announces that his only hobby and specialty is fighting, and then boldly reveals that he is a killer. The entire crowd reacts in shock, wondering who this kid could possibly be, and immediately starts thinking about scouting him themselves. Peter introduces himself by proclaiming he is a killer at hitting the books, and wishes everyone a great school year, causing everyone to laugh at the joke while some students admire his confidence. A group of big guys pushes people aside to approach him, and one of them notes his plan worked while greeting him as the killer boy, and asking if he was flirting with his Eugene. Peter expresses confusion, leading the bully to explain that this creates a perfect scene, and introducing himself as Yi Sol Jang, who has been faithful to his girlfriend for 22 days as Shin Yongwang's most dramatic lovebirds. Before accusing the protagonist of stealing her, a girl echoes he stole her man, and Yi Sol promises the new student will pay, though Peter points out they just met. The guy throws a punch that made him dominate the Mapo district, but it misses for the first time, and our hero lands a hard punch to his head, thinking he could feel it coming as the delinquent falls and apologizes for failing to protect Eugene. A teacher rushes over, scolds Peter for fighting on school grounds, and demands to know where his father is, to which our boy replies his father is probably dead, prompting an apology and an instruction to follow him. The educator scolds the delinquents, while Yi Sol struggles and insists on fighting the protagonist, despite others noting no one is holding him back. Spectators discuss whether to look into Peter, call him interesting, or suggest killing him as the teacher orders the protagonist to walk faster, and our boy notes they are walking at the same pace. Female students call the transfer student dreamy and attractive despite being a little cringe. Yuna is at the school, gets surprised upon seeing young Peter, and realizes he is infiltrating the institution, sitting near a bench and flowers where the protagonist approaches and asks to sit. Yuna asks what he is doing there, and Peter claims he escaped people wanting his attention before asking what she is doing, though she questions if his plate is full and he tells her to shut up. The protagonist brings up a past memory involving a flashback where young Peter showed her a picture asking if she wants to live and survive by identifying the old Peter as the man who killed Octoman as her ticket to survival, asking why she is still after him if he kept his promise. Yuna notes that Glory organized close monitoring around her because of him, and asks if he knows how difficult things are, while the protagonist remarks there is no getting through to her and that surviving and eating burgers is the least she could do after he let her live. The young woman argues her mercy caused trouble, and Peter replies she does not understand the cruel crew and awful place this is, or who he truly is, asking what she can accomplish as an outsider as she picks up her plate to leave. The protagonist asks her to help him because he needs all the help he can get and believes she has joined his side. telling her he will be in touch and shocking her by calling her by name before disappearing. The Shenyang High School Sports Festival begins, featuring track star Jonathan, who holds the 400-meter record, but retires his title because the new transfer student is unbelievably fast, leaving a losing competitor being comforted by a peer while girls gather around Peter with excitement. The protagonist passes a vision test with a board showing numbers 4 and 8, revealing 20/20 vision that shocks onlookers who wonder if he is an alien. During an advanced fruit cutting class, a kitchen scene unfolds where the instructor announces the lesson. Someone remarks our boy was raised like royalty, and the teacher warns everyone to be careful with knives. Peter does his best and carves a rabbit-shaped fruit sculpture, leaving everyone and the teacher shocked. Boys bully Mr. Lee by refusing to clean up and mocking him as weak, stating he can only throw tantrums or give detention and threatening to frame him for child abuse to revoke his teaching license if he threatens their family. When the teacher calls it an infringement of educational rights, one bully punches him down, tells him to shut his mouth, and threatens demerits and lawsuits unless he minds his business while suggesting uploading a video to TikTok for views. Peter arrives, identifies himself as the new transfer student and killer boy, and asks if they insulted their teacher, prompting them to mock his killer title and ask what he will do. When the protagonist refuses to leave and faces an incoming punch from a student who warns him of pain, Peter dodges every strike, punches the attacker down, and shatters a brick thrown by another opponent with his bare strength, causing the bullies to beg for forgiveness and promise revenge. The protagonist checks on Mr. Lee, who appreciates the defense but scolds him for fighting on school grounds again, calling him by name as he moves toward a phone. The educator realizes Peter is not ordinary because his cup did not spill a single drop during the fight, asking where and why he learned to fight like this. The protagonist thinks about wanting revenge on the Glory Club for taking his house, family, money, and everything away, deciding he might as well be dead. Mr. Lee asks Peter to join the volunteer club, noting he has been waiting for the protagonist to approach and observe his performance in the race, vision test, and fruit sculpture. The teacher reveals Peter is Glory's killer coach and welcomes him to Shenyang's killer training class called the Volunteer Club, where selected students learn to become killers and where Glory trains and creates them. Peter enters expecting a volunteer club but finds an ordinary school with ordinary students, making our boy wonder if this is the right place. Mr. Lee announces a new volunteer starting today. Yuna Lee, who is present, wonders why Peter is there and hopes he does not act too friendly. When our boy winks at her, she grows confused, initially thinking it was just something in his eye before wondering if it is a signal that he will kill her. Peter introduces himself, appreciates the warm welcome, and thinks the club looks too ordinary for killer training. While the girl considers the welcome meaningless, other students discuss the new arrival, noting the club usually only takes people from Yongguang Orphanage and complaining about a nepotism entry. Biggie Daiko, whose specialty is high-speed movement, and Junior Daiko, whose specialty is superhuman strength and grappling, are introduced as students from Yongguang Orphanage. The protagonist wonders how this makes sense given he is also from Yongguang Orphanage from the beginning. Mr. Lee suggests a quick welcome ceremony, and the students prepare by thinking about barbecue and calling Peter over like a little piggy. Our boy realizes Glory training remains intense. The brothers approach the protagonist to welcome him first, but Yuna tells them to stop, thinking Peter could end them instantly. The protagonist pushes the siblings away, telling them to get out of his way unless they want to get crushed, prompting the girl to think she tried to save them. The brothers approach again, asking about his experience fighting delinquents from neighborhood training. Peter says he fought a few times, while remembering he actually fought about 1,500 times. The boys tell him to get ready for his last fight as they move toward him, stating the place is not for ordinary delinquents, and that someone like the protagonist does not understand what they risk their lives for to become a legendary killer like Apostle Peter, adding there is no place for a lazy napper dressed like him. The two boys attack, but Peter slides backward and positions himself in front of them, finding it exhausting to listen to both finish each other's sentences and tells them to come at him. The brothers think he has a death wish and move forward, saying he does not know they spent 18 years doing this, while our boy remembers he has been doing it for 65 years. The siblings strike again, and someone tells them to go easy, to which they reply they only used half their strength. The other students clap, saying the new kid could not land a hit and ran away out of fear, making it nothing. Peter passes through a narrow lane, and Yuna calls out from behind, asking if he thinks he is better than the others as a volunteer club member. The protagonist says he has no idea what she means, but she insists she cannot fool him because she watched the whole time. remembering how every punch the boys threw missed, while Peter did not even clench his fist. The protagonist says he always does his best, but she calls him a liar and offers proof, noting he has not shed a single drop of sweat unlike the two fools. She pins Peter against the wall, asking what his plan is and what he is hiding, since sneaking into the school and hiding his true strength is suspicious. The protagonist asks if she really wants to know, and when she tells him to just answer, he slips, sits on the ground, and says they will take a rain check because it is time for lunch. Yuna watches him leave and notes that it is midnight. The scene shifts to a bus driver holding a cup of tea, thinking the sun always shines after a storm because he received a customer who booked the entire bus for about 743 million KRW, making it his lucky day. He looks ahead, grows confused, seeing only one passenger standing there instead of a large tour group, and asks where the rest of the party is. The passenger folds he is alone with quite a bit of luggage. The man understands and starts loading several suitcases, feeling disappointed that his lucky day involves so much luggage. The passenger reaches behind a bag, asks the driver to guess what is inside, but he does not understand. The bus drives down the road, and the driver thinks in the rearview mirror that he never agreed to play the game while the passenger relaxes in his seat. The man keeps thinking about the luggage, grows convinced, and notices one suitcase moves. The scene shifts back to the volunteer club, where Mr. Lee tells everyone they received a new commission from their client, Mr. Eun Chang Choi, chairman of Deja Group and a major sponsor of Glory. The instructor explains the squad that successfully completes the commission will be personally recommended by the chairman to immediately become official killers. Peter and Yuna realize the time has come. Mr. Lee states the mission is to rescue the son of the chairman from a recent series of teen kidnappings. A student asks why the leader does not call the police, and the teacher explains he wants revenge instead, telling them all they need to do is rescue the son. The students discuss whether to accept, pointing out it normally takes 2 more years to become official killers, and that completing this mission skips that step, though some feel bad about it and question why such an important mission goes to them instead of experienced killers. Mr. Lee tells those students they can stay behind. The brothers step forward to participate, noting they have additional teammates tagging along, specifically the nepotism entries and weaklings. Yuna raises her hand to go, and the protagonist volunteers as well. She tells Peter to stop copying, but our boy explains his hand was up the whole time. Yuna reminds him the commission is for volunteer club members, and the protagonist replies he is a member even through nepotism. Everyone announces they are ready, and the mission site is revealed to be an amusement park. Upon entering the amusement park, the Daiko brothers grow confused by the carnival attractions and the people wearing sparkling outfits, with Junior wondering why they wear swimsuits outside, and Biggie admitting he does not understand. Yuna tells them to stop staring as she thinks about Mr. Lee briefing them that Chairman Choi's son was kidnapped there. Meanwhile, 2 girls approach Peter to ask for his phone number and if he uses TikTok, leaving our boy confused by the sudden attention. Yuna recalls their lack of information beyond the chairman's son being last seen at the massive amusement park without a known location or confirmation that he is still alive, though Peter looks unusually confident as if he has a plan. When the protagonist suggests they head somewhere first, an employee standing before an attraction apologizes that they need a reservation to ride and asks them to move aside, confusing the siblings who wonder who makes roller coaster reservations and say they lack time for that, while the worker offers to direct them to customer service, and nearby visitors remark that they must be newcomers who can simply use the app. Yuna takes out her phone for the protagonist and the brothers to see, discovering that today's reservations for the boat ride and haunted house are unavailable, prompting one of them to question why she wants rides during a mission before the group rides a carousel, excitedly enjoying the horses, followed by a roller coaster and other attractions. Meanwhile, Peter and Yuna stop at a shooting game where the shopkeeper secretly plans to take their money with a rig game he decides to ease because they look like good kids, while she admits she has never used a toy gun. Instead, the protagonist and she wins several giant stuffed teddy bears, thank the man, and leave. Peter points toward another attraction, while the brothers call for him to join their great time, leading the protagonist to watch and think it is likely their first amusement park visit and childhood experience like his own, hoping they enjoy it fully before any chance ends. Later, Yuna sits alone under a shady tree eating a lollipop, checking her phone, and realizing the others forgot the mission because they are not ordinary children playing around, when the AirPods of Yoon Jul Choi appear on her tracking app signal pointing to the women's restroom, making her wonder if someone picked them up or shares the name, and though she considers backup, she investigates alone. Inside the normal-looking restroom, The signal comes from a girl, so Yuna smiles to avoid looking suspicious, and politely asks about the AirPods, which frightens the stranger into calling her boyfriend and claiming she tried to grab her from behind, shocking the investigator, who did nothing of the sort, as the man confronts her about messing with his girlfriend, though the girl tells him to stop because Yuna only wanted to apologize, but he insists on teaching the intruder a lesson first. Meanwhile, Biggie asks if anyone has seen Yuna. Junior assumes she is stuffing her face, and Peter has not seen her either, while believing she can handle herself. Back to Yuna with a lollipop in her mouth fighting the boyfriend. She jumps onto a bench, exchanges punches, and nearly pushes her lollipop stick toward her ear before stopping herself upon realizing she got ahead of herself, calmly asking the frightened girl where she got the AirPods, and the teenager nervously begins to answer. Back to Peter. People whisper and point as Yuna runs toward the protagonist and the brothers to report finding the location where Eungail's AirPods were last detected. The protagonist notes they found their destination because an amusement park's countless attractions make a secure place where screams go unheard the easiest spot to make someone disappear. And after checking the sold-out haunted house reservation list, and noticing not a single person entered all day, Peter decides they are heading to the haunted house. As the group walks inside and the door creaks open, the brothers stop fooling around to take the lead and watch the protagonist back, while Yuna reminds them they insisted on leading. And Peter realizes something feels strange because he cannot sense a single person inside telling everyone to be ready for anything when she asks what he means. The protagonist realizes their mission begins and is already halfway complete, recalling Mr. Lee's briefing that rescuing the hostage and eliminating the culprit first requires getting kidnapped themselves, causing everyone to deliberately lose consciousness, collapse to the ground, and close their eyes as Sangdo Park walks toward them. Back with Mr. Lee, a rushing student urgently asks, and the mentor immediately realizes something is wrong, orders the student to contact them, and when calls go unanswered, explains that the mission is not simple because they are dealing with the villain. The shocked student learns from Mr. Lee that Sangdo Park was once talented enough to be one of Glory's killers before Glory failed to control and expelled him, and though the caller insists their classmates are capable from training, the mentor states the student does not understand the kidnapper's capabilities near nearby suitcases where Peter, Yuna, and the others lie unconscious beside Sangdo Park, the mysterious man who previously rented the entire bus, who explains he used chloroform to knock them out and notes that, unlike in movies, people inhaling chloroform pass out with wide-open mouths, cutting back to the student looking in shock at Mr. Lee and demanding they stop the criminal immediately. The mentor places his prosthetic leg on the table as the student insists there is no time to waste in saving the students, suddenly realizing Sangdo Park has already captured them and fearing he will cut off their legs as well. Yuna slowly opens her eyes and realizes that Sangdo has already caught them. As she vibrates with an incoming call from Mr. Lee, the kidnapper picks it up and answers. Mr. Lee warns him that if he touches his students, he will make him pay. The man mocks the teacher, noting that it has been a long time since they last met. He asks if that is really how a senior should speak to a junior and taunts him, asking if he is afraid he will cut off the student's legs just like he cut off his. This sends Mr. Lee into a rage. The kidnapper suggests a game, challenging him to guess how many of the student's legs will remain intact by the time he arrives. He promises that if he guesses correctly, Chairman Choi's son will be released, but he warns that the consequences will be different if the guess is wrong. As the students watch, Yuna wonders why Mr. Lee sounds so frightened. He demands to know where the kidnapper is hiding, and upon hearing him call out to her, one of the Daiko brothers remarks that because she and Peter are weaker, the man is bound to target them first. He tells Mr. Lee to hurry because the fun is about to begin. Meanwhile, Yuna notices Peter lying beside her with his mouth open and cannot believe he is actually sleeping. Having no other choice, she removes a sock and pokes his face with her toes to wake him. Peter immediately asks what she is doing, revealing he was never asleep. Yuna quickly claims she was trying to wake him, to which the protagonist asks if she really intended to do so with the smell of her feet. Yuna tells Peter to follow her and uses the skills she learned during training to free herself. The protagonist watches her, and when she expresses surprise at how he freed himself, Peter explains that he stayed ready in case the kidnapper tried anything dangerous. Yuna warns him that this is not an ordinary kidnapping, as the man previously had ties to Glory. The protagonist says he already knows this and asks if she enjoys gambling, leaving her confused. By then, Yuna's restraints are undone, and she and Peter move forward just as the Daiko brothers arrive. One of the brothers tells the kidnapper that he has a lot of guts for an office worker and warns him to give up if he does not want to die. as they have a mission to complete and want to finish things quickly. When they demand to know the location of Chairman Choi's son, the man praises their confidence and proposes a new game. He tells them that if they win, he will do whatever they ask and release the chairman's son, but if they lose, each of them must forfeit a leg. Mr. Lee, driving toward the amusement park as fast as he can, desperately hopes they do not accept the challenge. The Dako brothers admit they initially underestimated the kidnapper, but now realize he has a dangerous side. They confidently declare he will never walk again, tear off their shirts, and prepare to fight. The man throws knives toward them, insisting that games are only fun when they are fair. The brothers warn him that he will regret it because they are highly skilled with blades. As the fight begins, Biggie finds it easier than expected, noticing they are using the same type of knives. He believes the man is slower and that the advantage will shift to him as the fight continues. However, he suddenly feels something is strange. He realizes the knife he is holding has no sharp edge. The kidnapper responds with a creepy smile, saying the blade does not need to be sharp. Peter and Yuna arrive and call out to Biggie and Junior to offer help, but the brothers tell them to stand back, insisting that if they cannot win, the others cannot either. The brothers explain to the man that he does not understand their life goal. They recall their time at Yeonggwang Orphanage and the final graduation challenge known as the Hell Period, where they spent an entire month in an isolated forest without food or water, given only a single bullet. They explain that thousands of vicious beasts roamed the area and the children often betrayed each other or gave up. The brothers, however, refused to die a pathetic death and kept their bullet until the very end, believing it would change their fate. When a massive bear appeared, they fired their only bullet. They were the only 2 survivors out of 181 children in their cohort. They further note that Peter set a record 58 years ago by completing the Hell Period without using his bullet at all. Returning to the present, the brothers explain that they have spent the last 10 years trying to become a legend like the protagonist, and they view the kidnapper as nothing more than a stepping stone. They charge at him, with Biggie grabbing him to hold him in place. Junior leaps into the air to thrust his knife toward him, but the man simply grabs the attacker's arm and states he will take the arm instead. When Junior tries to stab him, he snaps the knife in half. He mocks them for thinking they could be like Peter. The kidnapper then reveals his true weapon, a heavy Nepalese kukri, explaining that he has trained with it his entire life and that it is thicker and faster than a normal knife, making it the perfect tool for a killer. A caption identifies him as Sangdo Park, a former glory killer with an A-rank rating. The brothers struggle to comprehend how he wields such a heavy weapon effortlessly. He rushes them, strikes them repeatedly, and sends them flying. Realizing the man is a monster, they urgently tell Peter and Yuna to run. The kidnapper tells Yuna to calm down, noting that since they are just kids, he has not killed them yet, though he insists on finishing their game. He raises his kukri to cut off their legs. As Mr. Lee continues driving and pleads for him to stop, Yuna shouts in horror, realizing he intends to go through with the mutilation. The man gives Peter and Yuna a creepy smile and suggests they play a game. Peter tells him to double the stakes, offering both of his legs, one arm, or even his head. Impressed by the protagonist's resolve, the kidnapper agrees. He throws a knife toward Peter to ensure the game is fair. When Yuna warns him that he cannot fight with that sword, the protagonist points to a large plate and declares that it is all he needs. Sangdo laughs and mocks Peter, claiming the metal tray is a pathetic choice for defense, and joking that the sight of it nearly makes him cry from laughter. Despite this, he warns our protagonist that he will not go easy on him just because he is young. The attacker charges forward with his kukri, launching a series of stabs at Peter. Our protagonist deflects the strikes by using the tray as a shield. He sarcastically praises Peter's creativity, assuming the tray is nothing more than a defensive tool. He challenges the protagonist to guess how many slashes the tray can withstand, confidently believing that a single strike will be enough to shatter it. Meanwhile, Mr. Lee continues driving toward the amusement park while wondering about the situation unfolding. He is determined not to let history repeat itself or allow the killer to take everything away from him again. He recalls a past moment in a casino where Sangdo calmly told a young woman not to be nervous, as such situations were routine for him. Since they had come that far, he suggested playing a game to decide who would leave alive and advised the dealer to bet on him if she wanted to be smart. During that same memory, several glory killers surrounded Sangdo and informed him that his repeated incidents had placed the organization in an awkward position. They told him he had been terminated to satisfy outside forces, and that only veteran killers ranked B or higher were permitted to remain. Everyone present believed it was impossible for the attacker to defeat 5 B-rank killers at once. However, As Mr. Lee watched, he drew both of his swords and displayed abilities far beyond those of an ordinary human. He cut off Mr. Lee's leg, ending his career as a glory killer. The driver realized then that it did not matter how strong their own weapons were, because once the man had his swords in hand, the battle was already lost. Back in the present, Sang-do swings his kukri, which slices the metal tray cleanly into 2 pieces. He taunts Peter, telling him he was lucky and that his little shield is now destroyed. Yuna realizes the situation is becoming dangerous and feels she must help Peter. Our protagonist calmly remarks that kukris are typically blunt weapons rather than sharp knives and admits surprise at how sharp the assailant's blade actually is. She suddenly understands that Peter never intended to use the tray as a shield. Peter thanks the killer, noting that he has just provided him with the perfect weapon. She realizes that the protagonist intentionally waited for the tray to be split so he could use the sharp pieces as blades. Sang-do admits that Peter is not bad and suspects he is trying to prove he is more than an ordinary kid. He begins to wonder if the recent events are merely a coincidence. He remembers being certain that he landed a perfect slash earlier, but our protagonist stepped back at the exact moment, survived, and had the tray split perfectly, concluding that it cannot be a coincidence. The attacker warns Peter that his tricks will not work on him. He decides to test whether the boy's actions are planned or lucky and attacks again. He is convinced he finally landed a clean hit and felt the blade cut through flesh, but when he looks again, he realizes he only sliced through a pillow. Sang-do is stunned to find that Peter has already slipped behind him. He realizes that if he had not blocked with his hand, our protagonist would have sliced open his neck without hesitation. He also understands that the broken tray cannot cut through thick clothing or defend against his weapon, which is why Peter targeted his exposed neck. As he struggles to keep up with the protagonist's movements, the killer wonders if the boy is even human. The fight continues as Peter keeps dodging and counterattacking. Yuna watches closely, noting that the assailant's kukri is heavy enough to cause death with a single direct hit, yet the weight makes him slower than our protagonist. She realizes that if the battle continues long enough, Peter is bound to win. Sang-do suddenly changes his style, claiming the right equipment is needed to catch his prey, and reveals hidden blades sliding out from inside his kukris. By abandoning the extra weight of the main weapons, he becomes much faster. Yuna notices that the fight has changed, though she finds it strange that the attacker is swinging blades that are normally meant for stabbing. He charges and yells for Peter to die, but as he thrusts a blade forward, it suddenly slips from his hand. The killer is stunned, and our protagonist calmly asks if he can no longer feel his hands. Sang-do realizes the truth. Peter was never aiming for his neck, but was targeting his hands from the very beginning. When the attacker demands to know what happened, our protagonist explains that he has severed every muscle, tendon, and nerve required for the man to use his hands, specifically naming the extensor muscles, adductor muscles, median nerve, radial nerve, and ulnar nerve. Peter reveals that he never intended to kill the killer from the start. He, unable to understand what is happening, realizes Peter is no ordinary kid, and becomes convinced that the boy has killed countless people before. Our protagonist reminds the attacker of his earlier claim that a metal blade could never defeat his weapon, tells him the tables have turned, and declares that he is going to defeat him with the very thing the killer underestimated. Sang-do looks back on his teenage years when constant bullying defined his daily life. His tormentors frequently taunted him, finding his suffering amusing as they asked if he wanted more. Because of this, he spent his days consumed by a murderous rage, yet he lacked the strength or courage to fight back. Everything changed after one incident where his bullies promised to stop if he could defeat 2 dogs. In that moment of despair, he wished for death, but a suggestion to play a game suddenly made his heart race. His body moved on its own accord, and he discovered that betting his life on games made him stronger. The resulting surge of adrenaline and dopamine turned gaming into a drug, and from that point forward, he never lost a fight. Back in the present, Peter wraps a broken metal tray around his fist and hits Sang-do with a powerful punch that knocks him backward. As the tray hits the floor, the antagonist stares in disbelief, desperately wanting Peter to stay away. Sang-do grabs a grenade and points it toward nearby suitcases, revealing that they contain the kidnapped children, including Chairman Choi's son. Yuna immediately realizes the children are inside those bags, and that detonating the grenade in a place lined with gas pipes will kill everyone. The kidnapper threatens that they will all go to hell together and orders Peter to kneel and beg for his life. Before the antagonist can react, Peter forces the grenade into his mouth. While the kidnapper wonders how this happened, Peter explains that anyone who has used a grenade understands the danger once the pin is pulled. Peter tells him to keep a tight grip on his jaw to survive and mocks his method of intimidation. The antagonist panics with the grenade in his mouth until Peter knocks him backward and calmly replaces the pin. Peter tells him to stop crying because the fight is not over. Seeing the situation, Yuna worries about what the kidnapper will try next and tells him to wait. Once the grenade is removed, Sangdo desperately begs for a tie, promising to keep his actions secret and release all the children if he is spared. Mr. Lee then bursts through the door and is stunned to see the once terrifying kidnapper begging for mercy. Peter casually asks the man about the whereabouts of the pretty Samba girls. The commission concludes with a safe rescue of all victims, including Chairman Choi's son. Sangdo continues to plead for a draw even while being restrained. Having run away from the organization 13 years prior, the legendary killer proves far less threatening than his reputation suggested. He is eventually zipped into a body bag for transport to Glory headquarters, still begging for a tie as the bag is sealed. Mr. Lee reflects that his own career-ending nightmare has concluded. He realizes that Peter and the Daiko brothers were responsible for the antagonist's defeat, and decides not to dwell on the lingering questions about the fight. Before leaving, Peter reminds Yuna to cover up with a blanket to avoid catching a cold. After completing the commission, the Daiko brothers officially become killers, though they are disappointed to receive only D-rank cards given that Sangdo was at least an A-rank or S-rank target. As an elevator descends, they grow nervous about their destination, fearing they might be killed. When the doors open, they are met by several tall, muscular women. They attempt to close the doors and pretend to be the wrong people, but one woman steps forward and explains she has been waiting for them. The brothers quickly change their demeanor and accept the welcome. The woman leads them inside, noting the chairman's interest in them due to their role in rescuing the Deja Group's successor. They are treated to a feast in a luxurious dining room, where the woman explains that the chairman has ordered staff to cater to their every need. They are also given custom-tailored suits. The brothers feel proud, boasting that Peter and Yuna are lucky to be there with them. When the woman mentions the biggest gift is in the next room, they find a vast collection of high-quality rifles and munitions. The chairman allows them to take whatever they need. The brothers decline the guns at first, but then decide to select a few rifles. Yuna notices high-value Damascus knives, but declines to take one, feeling she did not contribute enough to the battle. Peter surprises everyone by choosing only a fountain pen. The woman and the others are baffled by his choice, assuming a younger man would want more impressive equipment. Peter simply notes that he is familiar with such weapons. Shortly after, the woman receives word that the chairman wants a private meeting with Peter. The brothers complain about being excluded, but the woman explains the invitation is for Peter alone. In the elevator, the woman compliments the choice of the pen. Peter explains it is a model he knows well, and she notes it was a limited edition from 40 years ago. When Peter mentions it was handed down by his grandfather, she finds it strange. Since he did not grow up in the orphanage, she cannot answer Peter's question regarding why the chairman wants to see him. Upon arrival, the woman escorts Peter into the chairman's office and leaves him alone with Yun Chang Choi, the head of the Daiha group. The chairman welcomes Peter warmly and asks about his meal and his suit. When Peter asks why he was invited, the chairman insists he has no hidden motives and notes that he understands why Peter is being cautious. The chairman then reveals that he knows exactly who Peter is. Peter feels a touch of surprise when the chairman asks if he recognizes the name. The chairman then drifts into a memory from December 24th, 1978 at Namsan Mountain. Inside a cabin, a man is bound to a chair while being tortured by two assailants. They repeatedly insist there is only one way to ensure the survival of the kidnapped child, demanding that Korea surrender its jointly developed missiles to the Soviet Union. They threaten that the son of the Daiha Group chairman will be killed if these demands go unmet. Elsewhere, the chairman is urged to stay composed. He is told that the president has already reached out to the United States and that elite special forces units, including Delta Force, are en route to Moscow to rescue his son. A sense of false security is shattered when a sniper on a passing train downs their helicopter, and word arrives that the Delta Force team has been wiped out. When someone asks if the chairman is truly speaking of that place, he confirms it. The scene shifts to Yongguang Cathedral, where the chairman bangs on the door, desperate for the father to answer. He explains that his son, Yun Chang, has been taken by the Soviet Union. He offers the Daiha Group's total support for a century if the church will help, begging him to send the strongest of the 12 apostles. The father initially acts oblivious, but the chairman persists in his plea. He calmly states that there is no need for alarm because everything follows the Lord's plan, and he asks those present to pray. The chairman is stunned that prayer is the response to such a crisis. When someone notes that the first 3 Special Forces teams have been annihilated, the father simply explains that the apostle he is sending is capable of finishing the job alone. Peter boards the train. Introduced as the most powerful of all the apostles, the men on the train are shocked, questioning how he arrived and if he is truly alone. He confirms he is, and moments later, he shoots one man in the head. He moves through the train carriages, disposing of every enemy with precise shots, having brought exactly enough bullets for the task. In the next carriage, a Russian kidnapper holds a teenage Yan Chang at gunpoint. He warns Peter to drop his weapon or the boy will die. The kidnapper mentions that he has heard stories of Peter, the monster who works alone and is always the last one standing. Though he expected someone older, Peter slowly raises his hands, and when Yan Chang realizes he speaks Korean, he whispers for the boy to lower his head when he counts to 3. The kidnapper demands they speak Russian, but Peter begins his count. At 3, the kidnapper tries to fire, but Peter flicks a coin through the forehead of the assailant, killing him instantly. He tells him to go back to speaking Russian before saying goodbye. This man is identified as a KGB lieutenant colonel. After the rescue, Yan Chang thanks Peter. He lights a cigarette, and when the boy asks if he is Korean, Peter places a hand on his head. He clarifies that he did not come for the boy personally, but to save the future of the Daiha group. He tells Yan Chang to get up because they have a long journey home. The boy looks at Peter with deep admiration, finding him incredibly cool. In the present, the chairman reflects that he is alive because of Peter. He has kept the face of his savior in his memory for 40 years. Looking at the current protagonist, the chairman assumes he must be the grandson of the man who saved him. Peter quietly exhales in relief that the chairman does not know the full truth. The chairman notes the remarkable resemblance, having never heard that the original savior had any family. Peter thinks to himself that it has been a long time since anyone spoke that name, and he is glad to know the boy survived to become a successful gentleman. When the chairman asks why Peter only chose a fountain pen from the army, he politely says the chairman's kindness is enough. He insists that he cannot let his savior's grandson leave empty-handed and offers a token of appreciation, the St. Petrus 44. He explains that the motorcycle has the world's highest speed record of 327.59 mph range and a stealth function that makes it invisible to GPS and security cameras. Yuna says Peter does not need such a thing, and the Doko brothers wonder why there is so much commotion over it. Junior tells Biggie to stop acting like a child. The brothers approach the woman to see if they can trade their weapons for the bike, but she refuses. Peter hands Yuna a helmet and tells her to get on. She complies, leaving the complaining brothers behind. Their coach calls, asking if they are enjoying themselves and informing them that the senior members of Glory want a meeting. The brothers are surprised by the idea of a gathering of killers, but the coach explains that their special hiring is the first in 4 years, so the seniors are curious. He tells them to show everyone what they can do. The brothers ride off on a one-wheel vehicle, determined to make the seniors regret challenging them. Yuna tells Peter to go faster so they do not fall behind, and our boy agrees, as he wants to distance himself from them anyway. Mr. Lee tells them to arrive and announce that the people everyone wished for have finally come. The group reaches the Glory Club Gangzhou branch, the Hapjeong Yongguang Cathedral. The brothers comment on the difficulty of being celebrities in a killer club, assuming their S-rank status makes them the center of attention. Peter asks Yuna if she is ready, feeling a mix of hope and concern as he sees the others acting too excited. Inside, people sit in prayer. Glory killers receive their assignments, known as revolutions, based on their rank. After praying for a safe journey, they are handed their mission and a rank badge. Yuna and Peter watch this process. Biggie tells Junior that their assignment is likely a promotion mission to reach S rank, but when they read the paper, it only says, "Fight, fight." They are confused, and a bystander notes that newcomers usually do not receive missions. Biggie tries to act confident, but the father interrupts, calling them newcomers. He explains that they do offer a cup of secret blood to new arrivals. The brothers are impressed by his smile, thinking it is their chance to get on his good side. Instead, the father pours the cup over them, smiles, and welcomes the D-rank deadbeats. Our protagonist greets the group, noting he has been waiting for their arrival. He remarks that many people fail to fear true pain until they experience it themselves, and he assumes these newcomers are no different. As he speaks, the surrounding killers begin to voice their warnings. They declare that rank is the only thing that matters, cautioning the Dako brothers against expecting special treatment just because they are older. They mock the boys for their arrogance as B-rank killers, reminding them that in this world, there are no rules. They label the brothers as pathetic little brats who are completely unaware of their low standing in the hierarchy. In response, Biggie and Junior confidently assert that they were born to reach the top. They tell their rivals to remember that they are the next S-rank apostles. The father finds this level of talkativeness unacceptable for B-rank killers, and declares that playtime is officially over. The other killers are genuinely surprised by the brothers' audacity, wondering if they are truly just kids, given their willingness to challenge a senior. As the father advances toward them, Yuna observes that the boys have grown significantly more confident. She notes that they seem even stronger than during their previous fight with Sangdo Park. The father, too, finds the situation strange, wondering where the fearful version of these two has gone. Suddenly, Biggie moves with incredible speed, appearing behind the man and grabbing him. Shocked, the father wonders how the boy managed to close the distance so quickly. Biggie calls out to Junior, who immediately charges forward with both fists. Simultaneously, the brother maneuvers to grab the father's legs from below, recalling that the boy's dream of becoming like him. The father reflects that he once held that same dream in his youth. He decides it is time for these newcomers to face reality. He raises his cane to block Junior's punch, and reiterates that playtime is over. Yuna realizes they need to intervene. At this moment, Director Jang emerges to ask how it feels to witness real killers in action. It is revealed that the director is a B-rank glory killer specializing in gliding. He achieved this rank by dedicating his entire life to the profession, which for most killers is the ultimate proof of their worth. The organization is structured strictly. There are 336 D-rank killers assigned to target ordinary citizens, 200 C-rank killers handling gangs and violent crime, and 100 B-rank killers who manage internal conflicts. Beyond them, the 36 A-rank killers handle national security assassinations. Once a person enters this world, their life becomes a cycle of weapons and bloodshed. Climbing the hierarchy is an exhausting and painful journey, and even total dedication cannot guarantee an ascent to the S-rank. The 12 S-rank killers, known as the Apostles, are the absolute best in the organization. The scene shifts back to the fight, where Biggie lies on the ground with the father pinning him by the neck. The man asks if the boy wants to know how one becomes an apostle. He prepares to strike, warning that they will be killed and reborn, and that this is the cost of mouthing off to a senior. The father mocks them for being orphans without mothers to cry to. He then turns his attention to Yuna, calling her a mere minion of Octomon and claiming she barely deserves her D-rank. He laughs at the idea of her ever becoming a real killer, suggesting that even if she worked tirelessly, she could never earn what Octomon makes. Peter grabs the father's hand, feeling that he has crossed the line. He calmly tells the man not to cross any more boundaries. Surprised by the brat's reaction, the father asks if he is looking for a fight, but Peter denies it. Peter remembers Jaiwon warning him that he cannot attract any unwanted attention. She had questioned how a new D-rank killer like him could have possibly defeated an A-rank opponent like Sangdo Park, and warned that it was only a matter of time before the organization discovered his true nature. She told him to abandon his plans and stop trying to save the kids. Peter knows that if he wants his revenge, he must remain hidden and play the part of a D-rank killer. The father punches Peter in the face, asking if he feels impressive and accusing him of acting tough in front of his girlfriend. Peter accepts the hit and asks the man to let their friends go to the hospital, noting that one has a stab wound and the other is unconscious. He explains that they need immediate treatment. The father warns him against speaking to an officer that way, and Peter apologizes, promising not to forget the lesson. Satisfied, the senior decides to end the confrontation, but demands they surrender their volunteer licenses. He tells them they can come back for them once they are ready to challenge him. The four leave the cathedral, confused and worried about how to explain the loss of their licenses to their coach. Biggie apologizes for failing to protect them, though he notes that their interference could have led to more serious injuries. He assures them that licenses can be replaced and admits he did not want them to see him in a weak moment. Peter puts on his helmet, calls Biggie captain, and suggests they go get lunch. While riding his bike with Yuna behind him, she asks what she can do to become stronger. Peter finds the question silly, but when she asks if he is upset, he clarifies that there is no reason to be. They lost their licenses because they were weaker and he believes it was an inevitable outcome. Yuna remains annoyed, admitting that it felt satisfying when they managed to fight back earlier. Back in the cathedral, two men discuss the satisfaction of crushing those brats. They assume the kids are already packing their bags to look for other work. They mention the tall, handsome boy, noting that despite his age, the look in his eyes was truly vicious. At that moment, Peter enters the cathedral. They mock him, asking if he has returned for another beating or to repent. Peter simply sits on a bench to pray. They continue to taunt him about his earlier defiance, warning him that he will soon understand how frightening the world can be. Peter remains calm and tells them that is exactly why he is there. He informs them that tonight, for the first and last time, they will meet an S-rank killer and witness what an apostle can truly do. One of the two men mocks Peter, questioning what an upstart like him could possibly achieve. Having spent 14 years in the business, the man claims he has never seen anyone like our boy and decides it is time to teach him a lesson. He orders Mr. Jong to give Peter a proper beating and send him away. Mr. Jong pauses, looking closely at Peter. He notes that the boy is merely a high schooler and a D-rank nobody whose name he cannot even recall. Peter stands completely still, appearing entirely defenseless with no weapon other than a small rosary. Despite this, the assailant senses that something is wrong. The look in the protagonist's eyes is not that of an ordinary D-rank kid. While the others wonder why the senior is spacing out and if he has been intimidated, he tries to convince himself that our boy is just an ill-mannered kid with a piercing gaze and that his instincts are playing tricks on him. Mr. Jong explains the unspoken rule of the killer world, which grants a senior the right to execute a junior found conspiring against them. He tells Peter that he will throw a book and the protagonist will instinctively block it with his arm. Just as predicted, Peter blocks the book with his arm. The senior immediately strikes. Assuming the protagonist is open, he expects our boy to bend over in pain after being hit, as human instinct dictates someone will naturally grab an injured area. However, the attacker reveals that his target was never the protagonist's side, but his eye. The attack is not ordinary. The rosary in Peter's hand breaks apart and he uses the beads as a weapon, wrapping them around the assailant's neck and pulling with enough force to cause a deep cut. As the others watch in confusion, the senior stands frozen and trembling. He explains that he cannot continue because he feels as though he has already experienced this situation countless times. After decades of combat, he has developed an innate ability to sense a losing battle before even drawing his knife. Yet this feeling of doom is unlike anything he has ever imagined. Overwhelmed by fear and a sudden desire to die, he apologizes and begs Peter for forgiveness, promising never to repeat his actions. Peter acknowledges that the ability to sense death is a basic skill for a killer, noting that the senior is quite capable in that regard. Meanwhile, the other man is shocked and cannot understand why Mr. Jong would allow himself to be intimidated by a kid. Jaewon arrives in a car with her dog and wonders what could have possibly gone wrong for the senior. She asks Peter why he picked a fight and warns him of the consequences if he gets caught. The protagonist remains calm, assuring her that will not happen. She realizes that the man Peter defeated was a B-rank killer, and the humiliation of losing to an 18-year-old high school student is something he will never be able to admit or overcome. She offers Peter a ride, but he ignores her and leaves on his motorcycle, leaving her frustrated after she followed him out of concern. The Daiko brothers worry about how Mr. Lee will react when he discovers they lost their volunteer licenses. They imagine him scolding them and calling the licenses as valuable as their own lives. Just as they fear his reaction, a man approaches and offers to help, telling them the power of Christ compels him to be nice. Surprised, the brothers ask if he is looking for another fight, but the stranger tells them to stop pretending and hands them their licenses. The siblings are shocked and relieved. Biggie thanks him, admitting that he previously thought the man was a jerk. The stranger simply tells them to screw off. As he leaves, he thinks to himself that Peter still gives him goosebumps, while our boy stands nearby, looking through a student record book. Peter realizes he needs to return the volunteer license to Yuna, but he cannot find her. Later, Biggie and Junior are asked to show their cards. They refuse to show them to trainees, confidently claiming the actual killers they fought were much stronger. In the training room, Yuna practices alone while recalling the fight between Sangdo Park and Biggie. She remembers being called pathetic and realizes she achieved nothing during the battle. She believes that if she does not become stronger, she will only put her brother, Eugene, in danger. Peter enters and asks why she keeps calling herself pathetic before returning her volunteer license. Yuna insists she does not deserve it. The protagonist asks if her actions are driven by her brother, and why she stays in a profession she feels unsuited for. When the girl tells him to stop because he knows nothing about her, Peter admits he knows a few things, including the fact that Eugene is not her biological brother. Shocked, she asks how he knows, and the protagonist asks her what happened between them. Yuna recalls her past, remembering when Eugene tried to spend time with her and called her family. She had rejected him, telling him he was not her real brother. She explains that she never truly had a family since being abandoned in a subway locker as a baby and brought to an orphanage. To avoid the pain of abandonment, she refused to form relationships and often wished she had died. She remembers being shot during a mission and bleeding heavily. The doctors refused to treat her because it was not worth the expense, but her brother begged them to save her. Yuna believes she should have died, but she wakes up in a hospital room, told by a doctor that her survival was a miracle. She learns that Eugene refused to leave her side and insisted on saving his sister even at the cost of his own life. When she finds him in the hospital, he is in critical condition but still only cares about her well-being. She realizes she was wrong to push him away and that he is the one person who truly cares for her. While Yuna hears doctors complaining about the cost of his blood packs and suggesting they get rid of him, she begs them not to abandon him. She declares that she is his sister and vows to repay every penny of his treatment. Back in the present, Yuna realizes this was the moment she found a reason to live. She no longer cares about their lack of biological relation and vows to save him. Peter apologizes for being too nosy and prepares to leave, but the girl stops him. Recognizing him as the strongest person she has ever met, she asks the protagonist to help her become stronger. Peter questions if this is truly her standard approach to requesting a favor. Yuna feels a surge of embarrassment and tells herself to keep her cool, reminding herself that it was just a slip of the tongue. She tries again, formally asking him to become her teacher. When Peter asks if that is her idea of a serious request, she loses her patience, claiming she does not need a teacher because she has gotten this far on her own. Peter counters by mentioning he has been thinking about her on his way over, which prompts an immediate shift in her tone as she asks if he is finally agreeing to teach her. Though he admits the mere thought of taking her on gives him a headache, she tells him to stop complaining and help her get stronger. Peter begins by listing her flaws: poor physical strength, low stamina, a short temper, and a tendency to get overwhelmed. He notes that she possesses nearly every weakness a killer could have. Offended, she asks if he is calling her a bad person. Instead, he explains that despite those drawbacks, her eyes are perfectly suited for killing. He points out that from start to finish, she never averts her gaze from a fight. As she thinks back to her experiences, including the battles involving the Daiko brothers and her encounter with Sangdo Park, she realizes he is right. She subconsciously memorizes every movement she sees. Peter compares her vision to that of legendary baseball players, noting that her ability to track minute details in high-speed combat exceeds even theirs. He admits he was genuinely surprised when she tracked Sangdo's finger movements during their fight. When she asks why he is suddenly handing out compliments, he simply states, "It is the truth." He tells her he knows of a weapon that can turn her weaknesses into strengths and allow her to defeat any opponent. As he holds out his hand, an object begins to glow. The narrative shifts to the Daiko brothers, who are busy smelling their earnings, noting that D-rank killers make 1,000,001 weekly. They speculate that apostles must earn at least 10 times that, though they acknowledge that money is mostly irrelevant to those who can get whatever they want. They discuss buying new headphones, while Peter wonders where Yuna is. The brothers explain she is likely at her part-time job, which surprises Peter, as she has been working there for nearly 2 weeks cleaning up blood and gore after missions. They admire her mental fortitude, noting that they find the work too gruesome to handle. They also speculate on her finances, with one suggesting she spends it all on food because she has the appetite of a beast, while the other claims she saves by eating free school lunches. Peter ignores their chatter, convinced that something involving Eugene is forcing her to stay silent about her money. A message from Yuna arrives, asking them to bring a scarf despite the spring warmth. They arrive at a freezing, 20-degree below zero factory, where Yuna reveals she is there to train with the glowing weapon Peter showed her, a rope dart. Peter explains that this traditional wushu weapon becomes more destructive with speed and spinning momentum, making the user's next strike unpredictable. The brothers dismiss it as a toy compared to guns, but Yuna proves them wrong by launching the dart straight through a thick block of ice. Even after she shreds multiple blocks with a single swing, they remain skeptical until they see the results and scramble to look up the price of the weapon. Yuna tells them to whisper if they want to be secretive. The factory owner, Bing-Su Park, approaches and notes that while many killers train here, he has never seen anyone leave a place in such shambles. He mentions that Peter paid 1,000,001 for the ice 3 hours ago, and hands her an ointment for the scars on her hands. As she leaves, Yuna struggles to draft a message to Peter and ends up calling him instead. She awkwardly asks what is on the lunch menu, and he tells her that spicy pork and strawberries are being served. Before hanging up, he congratulates her on finding her true weapon. Back at the factory, the brothers try to practice with the dart, realizing that Yuna's ability to curve her throws comes from raw talent, whereas others would need years of practice. As Peter walks away, he reflects on how she has finally found her strength and notes a special entry in her student records about previous training with a rope dart master. The scene concludes with a battered Sangdo Park standing amidst a sea of defeated killers, shouting that none of the lower-ranked fighters can take him down. A mysterious figure calmly walks toward him, picking up the weapon Sangdo dropped. He suggests they play a game and asks if Sangdo, the killer who almost reached S rank, has what it takes to defeat a real apostle. The former fighter stares in shock, realizing who is standing before him. A little girl cries on the floor inside Seoul Yongwang General Hospital because she is terrified of injections. The Daiko brothers tease her, calling her a scared little chicken who still has a lot of growing up to do, and they even ask the nurse if she can just be put under anesthesia instead. Yuna calls the Morans for the suggestion. As the nurse begins drawing blood, the siblings are surprised by the sheer amount required and wonder why so much is necessary. Peter learns that every newly appointed glory killer must undergo a complete physical examination at this facility. As the new killers move through a variety of medical tests, the nurse asks Peter for his birth year, and he provides his answer. While he is worried about all of the examinations, he is particularly concerned about the blood test. He understands the reason the organization collects the sample. He remembers that the test exists to place a leash on every killer. Although Peter is now young again, his fingerprints and DNA remain unchanged. The Glory organization uses these biometrics to track down anyone who betrays them. As the nurse ties a tourniquet around his arm, Peter realizes that the DNA in the organization's database will perfectly match his current profile. He concludes that his true identity will be exposed sooner or later. Back at her home, Jaewon angrily scolds him for willingly showing up to a blood test after already provoking a group of B-rank killers. She sarcastically remarks that he might as well just advertise his true identity as Peter. Surprisingly, the protagonist suggests that advertising himself is not a bad idea. She becomes even more frustrated, telling him she feels like killing him herself, but Peter insists that he already has a plan to avoid exposure. He casually reveals that his strategy is to blow up the hospital. Jaewon immediately smacks him, telling him to come to his senses. Peter complains about the pain, but she argues that his new youth has gone to his head, asking if he even understands what kind of place the hospital is. Peter acknowledges that it is one of the Glory Club's largest facilities. Seoul Yongwang General Hospital is the largest hospital in Korea operated by the organization. While it appears ordinary from the outside, it secretly serves killers by disposing of bodies, concealing assassinations as medical accidents, and carrying out illegal operations. The protagonist realizes the hospital's data center undoubtedly stores his DNA, so destroying it is his only option. Jaewon points out that even if he reaches the hospital, he must still face the person guarding it. He also points to a man sitting in front of a large monitor. Known by the codename Nathaniel, he was once a genius doctor viewed as a blessing from heaven, but he disappeared following a mysterious medical incident 4 years earlier in Rio de Janeiro. During that incident, police officers discovered bodies hanging from ropes across the street, which they initially mistook for a prank. The victims were all members of local gangs, and as the remaining groups turned on each other, the police captain saw an opportunity to wipe them out, ordering his men to use lethal force. A soldier at the scene smells gunpowder and realizes a gunfight recently occurred. As the squad approaches, they find the gunmen inside horribly mangled, their bodies twisted in ways that suggest they were not fought by a human. When a soldier suggests retreating, a hand reaches out and drags Sergeant Fernando away. The captain realizes it is an ambush and calls for backup, but soon the area falls silent, filled with blood and smoke. The remaining soldiers look up to find the corpses hanging from a ceiling, their heads removed and their necks attached to the ceiling itself. A mysterious figure moves among the bodies, demanding a stronger opponent. The soldiers open fire, but the bullets accomplish nothing. In a single day, the 6 gangs that ruled Rio for 30 years and the elite military police were completely wiped out. Back in the present at Jaewon's home, she asks if Peter found anything useful in the secret Rio government documents she obtained. The protagonist studies the files and doubts a normal human could break a gun with sheer strength. She reminds him that the hospital hides a monster just like that, and she suggests a sneakier approach than a head-on attack. Peter notes that she has helped him figure out a way to enter the hospital. After she complains that her efforts are being wasted, the protagonist assures her he has another idea that requires her assistance. The scene moves to a road with a large billboard, where Peter decides he just needs a quick greeting card. The billboard is hacked to announce that the protagonist is coming to visit Nathaniel. Inside a car, a white-haired man watches the billboard and explains to Jaewon that he hacked the Glory server to post the message. He worries that she is putting her life in danger with such a reckless prank, but she replies that Peter has never failed a mission in 50 years. At the hospital, killers gossip about the advertisement, shocked that Peter might be alive and that someone hacked headquarters to display the message. Groups of D-rank killers are dispatched to capture him, though many complain they are too weak for the task. They notice a group of famous killers from Brazil, including Agent Funerario, the Undertaker of Rio. They whisper that it is rare to see an A-rank killer, let alone Nathaniel, and realize they might witness a battle between two apostles. Experts believe the Doctor will win because the protagonist is nearly 70 and rumored to have cancer, though the Dako brothers loudly declare that he will be the victor. Other killers scold them for cheering for their target, noting that the protagonist will never leave the hospital alive. As they talk, Peter quietly appears behind the brothers. Outside the hospital, an officer addresses the gathered killers. He instructs them not to engage Peter directly but to approach him respectfully as a senior killer. Once close, they are to use their issued tranquilizers. He warns that the protagonist can bring down an elephant in under 3 seconds, and orders them to press the nearest emergency button as soon as they spot him so an A-rank backup can be dispatched. After the instructions are given, the killers scatter to begin the operation, and Peter watches it all, thinking the situation is going to be fun. Several men gather in a hot pool with a mysterious man who bears a large queen and masked tattoo on his back. They discuss the implications of Peter declaring war. One man mentions that the war declaration has everyone worried about Glory's future, and notes that people are already questioning the new boss's fitness for the position. Another man expresses deep anxiety, noting that they should never have messed with Peter under the guise of trimming the fat. He points out that Peter is currently untraceable and could strike and destroy everything at any moment. Someone asks Yan Chang if he truly understands how relentless Peter can be. Another man advises him to patch things up while he still can, urging the subordinate to give up if he cannot handle the situation rather than dragging everyone else down with him. Another man apologizes for not thinking things through and promises to handle the situation appropriately from now on. He mutters to himself that people were nice to him for only a split second before deciding they could walk all over him. After becoming the Army Chief of Staff, he feels they should have realized it was time to step down, and he dismisses them as decrepit vermin. Privately, he thinks about how he is waiting for Peter, viewing the upcoming conflict as his masterpiece against his father's, and wonders who will survive. The scene shifts to Seoul Yongguang General Hospital. Peter twists a man's neck to adjust it, and the patient relaxes in relief, praising our boy for being so skilled despite his youth. Peter humbly calls it a regular day on the job, noting that he usually uses those techniques for other purposes. He then asks the man if he knows a doctor named Hyan Illinois Na. When the patient denies knowing anyone by that name, Peter walks through the corridor, realizing that the doctor has likely abandoned his identity and gone into hiding. He concludes that the imposter must be hiding somewhere in the hospital, and that it is now a race to find the other first. The Dako brothers approach Peter and tell him it is time to go. Peter notices they are usually pushing patients with neck casts in wheelchairs, and when one brother calls him picky, Peter asks about Yuna. Biggie explains that she has joined the mission. Although Peter points out that Yuna is only rank 335, the older man notes that Peter is rank 336 but has become their associate, making him their right-hand man. After searching the lobby, the siblings tell Peter he did a good job and instruct him to call immediately if he sees anything suspicious, promising to protect him since they believe he is not a strong fighter. Suddenly, Biggie spreads his arms and claims he has found Peter. He compares a man walking past to an old photograph and wonders if it is really him, though Peter disagrees. The brothers stop the elderly man and ask if he is the hero they are seeking. The man replies that he was indeed a hero during the Vietnam War. The siblings insist he cannot stay there and attempt to escort him out quietly. When the man protests, one brother asks if he needs a syringe. A nurse approaches Peter, and when our boy asks her to clarify, she tells him not to worry because the old man has already had his blood test. Peter realizes the hunt for him is officially underway. Throughout the hospital, nurses begin telling patients they need blood tests for physical examinations. The Dako brothers continue trying to force the elderly man out while he struggles. Yuna suddenly bumps into Biggie, who angrily questions her presence since she is only ranked 335 and should not be allowed inside. She claims her younger brother is there and runs away. Biggie assumes she was just overwhelmed, while Jaiwon tells Peter via a hidden earpiece that there is no time to worry about his junior. Jaiwon asks if he has found Nathaniel, noting his earlier search did not yield much. Peter replies that he is still thinking about it. He realizes he needs to remain undercover to lure the target out. A large muscular man named Rodrigo, a B-rank killer from Undertaker, appears and warns the Glory members that he will kill anyone who fails their job. Peter introduces himself as Sung Ji-Yu Kim, a D-rank Glory member, and says he will pass through quietly. The protagonist realizes that since the target refuses to show himself, he must use bait to lure him out. Jaewon agrees to head in and prepare her team for a warm-up. Peter, now disguised as a male nurse, enters the operating room. Rodrigo asks who he is, and the protagonist says he is a D-rank killer in charge of surgical duties. The assassin orders the other Glory member to find Peter, but the protagonist remarks that he is looking for an enraged Nathaniel to make things easier. Angered, the killer says a D-rank has no right to speak that name. Peter notes that there is only one reason a killer asks about a target's whereabouts, which is to kill them. They begin to fight, and the B-rank fighter notes the timing is perfect. Elsewhere, an assistant shows a doctor live footage of Peter fighting the killer in the operating room. The physician counts to 10 and watches in shock as Peter defeats the B-rank killer. Realizing the protagonist is truly inside, the doctor asks where he went. The assistant explains that security recordings are being deleted in real time, and that they lack the technology to stop it, begging the employer to spare him. The scene shifts to Sangdo Park, who is submerged in a large solution-filled chamber. He is thrilled that Peter is finally in the building. The doctor stands before the prisoner and points to other chambers containing people like Grace, Carter, Xavier, and Robert, noting they are all waiting for Peter. The medic proudly remarks that they have finally trapped him, mentioning that Mr. Kim stated everything was perfect down to the last detail. Peter talks to Jaewon, noting that now that he has killed Nathaniel's pet, the hunter is bound to reveal himself. She agrees, noting that Nathaniel must be furious. Peter decides to wait and ambush the man. He finds Yuna eating and asks why she is there. When she tries to leave, he makes her sit down. He mentions he accidentally ordered too much chicken and wants her to help him pass the time. Yuna eventually eats, but the conversation turns serious when Peter asks why she is at the hospital. She explains that the old man she has a connection to was shot protecting her. Peter shows her a picture of Nathaniel on his phone and tells her not to lie about recognizing him. Yuna reveals that the man in the photo is not the real Nathaniel. Before she can explain further, a voice calls out to her. Nathaniel, dressed as a doctor and identified as the general manager of the hospital, asks why she is walking around without security. Peter realizes that the villain has finally revealed himself. Nathaniel approaches Yuna and asks her to identify the young man standing nearby while keeping his eyes fixed on Peter. She immediately anticipates that an encounter between these two will only result in violence. The protagonist politely introduces himself as a D-rank killer, explaining that he has been dispatched for this mission and never expected to meet such a prestigious figure in person. Our boy promises to do his best to ensure that Nathaniel is well served and requests that the doctor leave his care to him. Nathaniel turns back to Yuna, instructing her to come to his office once their rounds are complete and promising to send someone to escort her. As Nathaniel walks away, Peter watches him and realizes that the man is clearly no ordinary killer. In the corridor, an assistant approaches the doctor to report that a teacher at Xinyangwang High School claims the young man who fought Sangdo Park was simply lucky and not a cause for concern. Nathaniel insists that he will determine that for himself and asks for the requested profile. The assistant nervously hands over the file but fumbles and drops it, apologizing for his clumsy fingers. Nathaniel offers a quiet response. Suddenly, Nathaniel recalls shaking the protagonist's hand earlier. He remembers the introduction and notices a memory of an unusual twitch in our boy's hand. He asks his assistant for the D-rank killer's name, and the staff member confirms that the young man with Yuna is named Sunggu Kim. Nathaniel remarks that he intends to keep Peter close because the boy would make an excellent sample. Consequently, our boy is assigned to join the doctor's entourage. Later, Peter speaks with Jaewon over the phone. The ally insists that he finish his mission and leave immediately, unable to fathom why he would accept a position in the entourage. The protagonist suggests that it sounds like fun, noting that despite Nathaniel knowing an intruder is in the hospital, the doctor still cannot locate him. Jaewon grips her juice box so tightly that it spills, and she angrily demands to know what is wrong with him. She warns that if he is caught, everyone will die. Our boy admits he does not yet know what the entourage truly entails, but he expects to find out soon. He hangs up and returns to playing chess with a young girl. The protagonist excitedly praises her as a chess queen and asks for another game, though someone nearby notes that Peter was only going easy on her. A staff member hands Peter a keycard marked AOR 036, which grants access to every room in the hospital. He congratulates the protagonist for landing the position, explaining that the doctor rarely adds anyone to his inner circle. The employee outlines 3 strict rules. Our boy must never speak unless spoken to first, never question the doctor's actions, and never refuse an act of kindness. Peter wonders what kind of kindness could cause such nervousness among the staff. The assistant leads Peter to a room, telling him that the doctor dislikes waiting. Upon entering, Nathaniel notes that our boy has arrived at the perfect time. The doctor stands surrounded by the undertakers of Rio, a squad of elite soldiers from Brazil consisting of numerous A-rank and B-rank killers. These mercenaries are devoted entirely to bloodshed, hold no loyalty to the Glory organization, and serve Nathaniel without question. The doctor asks for an update on the search for Peter. His assistant confirms that all hospital entrances are sealed. An announcement echoes throughout the building, claiming a virus sample has leaked and ordering everyone into quarantine. The aide explains that they have collected DNA from every elderly person in the hospital to identify our boy, and estimates the testing will take 48 hours. He concludes that because the protagonist cannot escape, he is cornered and his capture is inevitable. Peter listens silently, realizing that while the logic is sound, defeating Nathaniel will be more difficult than he anticipated. The group continues rounds, stopping beside a young male patient. Nathaniel gently encourages the boy, promising that if he goes through with the treatment, they will be able to play soccer and return to school together. The doctor instructs the nurse to focus on the radial nerve rather than further surgery, because the patient's body cannot handle more, and asks Dr. Young to assist. Peter wonders if he is being tested, as they have done nothing but routine rounds so far. Nathaniel suddenly asks if our boy is disappointed by the lack of action, or if he is waiting to see the doctor's true side. The protagonist claims he is not disappointed, but Nathaniel calls him a liar and invites him to follow him to see something else. They descend into an area that does not appear on any hospital maps. Following a light at the end of a passage, they reach a secured door. Nathaniel uses his keycard to open it, revealing a hidden underground laboratory filled with massive chambers containing human test subjects. Peter finds the sight disgusting, while the doctor proudly calls this the place where his dreams become reality. Nathaniel claims that Charles Darwin was wrong, and that evolution is not a matter of nature or coincidence, but a process he personally controls. He explains that he eliminates the weak and cultivates the strong, which is why he is interested in our boy. Alarms suddenly trigger, warning that a test specimen has escaped and reached State 4. As the creature flees toward the exit, security forces fire paralysis needles, while warning that the surface gates will be sealed. As a countdown reaches 0 and the gate begins to close, Nathaniel's hand bursts through the wall, grabbing the specimen by the face and stopping it instantly. The doctor calmly scolds the creature for interrupting his conversation. Returning his attention to Peter, Nathaniel explains that he captures strong individuals to strip away their humanity and study them. He claims to have dissected every muscle and cell himself. The doctor tells the protagonist that he sees great potential in him and wants to make him the embodiment of his vision, offering to help him grow into an A-rank killer or perhaps even as strong as an apostle. Peter recognizes that Nathaniel possesses terrifying, unnatural strength capable of shattering stone with a bare fist. Later, Peter speaks with Jawan again. The ally is shocked that Nathaniel could sense someone behind a wall and react with such precision, and she urges our boy to run. The protagonist refuses, now more determined than ever to uncover the source of the doctor's power. Since 48 hours have passed and the DNA results should be in the office, Peter plans to use his keycard to break in and switch the test results. Despite Jawan's warnings that he will be caught, our boy is confident in his calculations. He notes that he has exactly 4 minutes and 30 seconds to locate and replace the files. Elsewhere, Nathaniel asks his assistant about the DNA results. The aide reports that after comparing every elderly patient sample, none matched Peter's DNA. The doctor finds this interesting and briefly considers if the protagonist is hiding in the ceiling before dismissing the thought. He begins to suspect that our boy no longer looks like his known profile. Nathaniel returns to his office to find Peter waiting inside. He stands behind the man and demands to know why a mere D-rank killer is occupying an apostle's private space. Peter immediately assesses the situation, noting that according to his calculations, the former was not scheduled to return for another 30 seconds. This early arrival suggests that his previous kindness and the tour of the secret laboratory were likely a calculated trap intended to make the protagonist drop his guard. He realizes the doctor must have been suspicious of him all along. Nathaniel repeats that he expects an explanation for the protagonist's presence. Peter claims he was only there to deliver documents requested by Dr. Hong and makes as if to leave. The doctor grabs his shoulder, noting that the protagonist has already rummaged through the files. He questions why the protagonist was so interested in the elderly patient's blood samples if he truly did not know where they were kept. He warns that if the protagonist cannot justify his actions, there is only one logical conclusion. He asserts that while words or appearances can be disguised, DNA is the one thing that can never be hidden. Peter realizes the doc is speaking about him. He maintains his composure, suggesting that since the target has not been found, he assumed the individual was still in the hospital using a different appearance. He mentions having searched records of patients who recently underwent plastic surgery for a match, then offers to conduct another search. Recognizing that the guy is onto him, the protagonist decides to use that suspicion to his advantage. He bows his head, sincerely apologizing for overstepping his boundaries in his desperate attempt to track down his target. Nathaniel notices something on the protagonist's face and orders him to wipe it off. He expresses satisfaction that the protagonist is taking the mission seriously, though he reminds him to uphold the dignity of the Glory organization. He dismisses the protagonist, who thanks him and exits the room. Once alone, he examines an old photograph of the protagonist. He realizes the face in the image was authentic and not a mask. Frustrated, he crushes the photo, convinced that the man he just spoke with is not the Apostle Peter he is looking for. He recalls his past, specifically an underground fighting arena described as a lawless coliseum. He remembers confronting the reigning champion, a Mexican fighter known as the Slasher who was famous for his lethal kicks. The doctor approached him and, after mocking the fighter's reputation, severed his leg. He recounts similar encounters with the world's strongest fighters, including a man famous for his powerful fists, whose arm he tore off, and an entire gang he massacred. The scene returns to the gory display of headless bodies hanging from a ceiling. The doctor reflects on how he traveled the globe to find and personally defeat the strongest beings alive. He recalls a victim, held by the throat, warning him that he could never be the strongest as long as the protagonist existed. The doctor had coldly replied that every kill was merely a step toward his true goal. Before he could extract information about the protagonist's identity and location, the man died. Returning to the present, Nathaniel looks at the photograph and concludes that whoever saw the protagonist last must know his whereabouts. He calls his assistant and orders him to bring Yuna to his office. Elsewhere, Yuna is speaking with the Daiko brothers, who question how a low-ranking killer like her was assigned to such a critical mission. She jokes that they should act like sick patients if they are going to play the part. They mention seeing her enter the doctor's office earlier. A muscular man approaches and informs Yuna that the doctor wants to see her immediately. When she hesitates, the man asks if she is challenging his orders. The brothers are shocked to see an A-rank member of the Undertakers serving as her escort. Yuna enters the office where Nathaniel sits with the protagonist's photograph on his desk. He remarks on her survival in multiple encounters involving the protagonist, noting that even other patients rarely kill each other, yet she has survived both an impulse attack and a confrontation with a high-ranking killer like Sangdo Park. The doctor asserts that the apostles have concluded the protagonist has been helping her. He accuses her of acting as a spy and asks what she could have possibly offered him in return. When Yuna reacts with anger, he ignores her frustration and brings up her younger brother, Eugene, who suffers from hemophilia and has less than 3 years to live. He offers her a life-saving serum worth $4.5 billion one developed at the hospital. He instructs her to tell the protagonist that he will be waiting under the hospital lobby's clock tower at 2 p.m. on the 24th. He explains this will be an easy way to trap the protagonist, and reminds her that she could never afford the cure on her own. He tells her she will save her brother while he captures his target. He hands her a prescription and, without warning, violently breaks her wrist, stating that the hospital does not admit healthy people. He warns her that if she refuses, Eugene will be the next to suffer. He tells her he will see her during his next round and leaves. Alone in her room, Yuna realizes the danger she is in. If the truth is revealed, Nathaniel will kill her, Eugene, and the protagonist. The protagonist suddenly enters the room and tells her it is time for her injection. He turns on the television to watch a singing contest. When Yuna demands he leave, he says this is his way of repaying her for saving his life. He mocks her for trying to chase him away and asks if she is doing it because of the doctor. He taps her broken wrist with the remote, noting that he did not inflict that injury and asking who did. Yuna hesitates, then asks what his plans are for the 24th. When he asks why she wants to know, she tells him to meet her under the clock tower at 2 p.m. on that day. She insists he simply do as she says, viewing it as the only option available to her. After he agrees and leaves, she cries while looking at a photo of her brother, praying she is making the right choice. Nathaniel, meanwhile, eagerly anticipates the 24th, believing it is the day the protagonist will finally come for him. He contacts Yuna through her earbuds to ask where the target is. She replies that the protagonist should be arriving at that very moment. The protagonist walks down the corridor toward the lobby as the clock approaches 2 p.m. and the doctor impatiently urges him to hurry. Yuna chats with Eugene over the phone. He notices 3 men in her profile picture and asks if she has a boyfriend. She clarifies that they are just friends, which surprises him, as he was unaware she had friends at all. He points out that the man in the center is quite handsome and jokingly asks if she likes him. When she insists he is just a friend, He teases her about sounding jealous and mentions his desire to play soccer with a man. He then expresses his wish to watch the World Cup in 3 years and cheer for their country. Yuna immediately promises to take him and starts booking their plane tickets. Although Eugene is initially excited about the prospect of their first trip abroad, he suddenly retracts his enthusiasm, claiming he is afraid of airplanes. She brushes off his hesitation, but he eventually admits he is actually worried about the cost. She tells him to stop worrying about money because she has everything under control, and she urges him to simply look forward to the event. She then informs Eugene that a doctor has developed a remarkable cure that can restore his health with just 1 drop. While he is skeptical, she encourages him to remain optimistic. He expresses his gratitude for having a sister like her, and after she jokingly tells him to stop being dramatic and admit she is tired, they say goodnight and end the call. As she hangs up, the phone slips from her hand, and the impact sends waves of intense pain through her fractured wrist. She tells herself that this is the best she can do and that she has no other choice. Yuna thinks about Peter and wonders if he is on his way, silently begging our boy to keep his promise to meet at 2 o'clock. She recalls their earlier conversation when she directed him to the clock tower in the park rather than the hospital lobby, warning him that anywhere else would lead him into danger. Peter had agreed, and as she watches him arrive and check the clock, she realizes the gravity of the situation. She knows that because Peter killed the apostle, he is in grave danger. Seeing the hospital lobby filled with armed individuals stationed at every corner, she realizes that even someone as strong as Peter is in over his head, and she silently prays for him to run away. She reflects on her decision to send him to the park to avoid the trap. As she monitors the lobby, she thinks about Sungu, who had unexpectedly entered her life. Despite her initial suspicions, he was the first person to show her the joy of sharing a meal and the comfort of companionship. He supported her through difficult times and helped her discover her own strength, and she knows she could never betray him. Nathaniel approaches Yuna and asks for an update. Startled, she lies and claims she has not heard from Peter since that day. She apologizes, explaining that she only lied because she wanted to secure the promised cure for her brother. She begs Nathaniel to let her work for him, promising to perform any task, including cleaning, and insists she has been training to become his best worker. Nathaniel notes that since she failed to bring Peter to him, she is no longer useful. He breaks his cane, mocks her training as pathetic, and orders his men to bring in the next person. Suddenly, a fire alarm erupts throughout the hospital, triggering a frantic evacuation. Biggie moves away in his wheelchair while Junior asks about their mission, prompting the former to prioritize the target. A loud crash draws everyone's attention, and Nathaniel questions the legitimacy of the fire since there is no smell of smoke. Yuna wonders if Peter has arrived as a sudden sense of anticipation takes hold. Peter walks over to Yuna and confirms he is by her side. When she expresses shock at his presence, he reminds her of their appointment at the clock tower. He explains that since the hospital staff and patients would have evacuated due to the fire alarm, anyone still present must be a killer hunting him. Nathaniel reveals he knew something was happening between them and questions if Peter believes he can challenge the Undertakers of Rio alone. Nathaniel explains the history of his organization, describing a poverty-stricken village in Rio where life is cheap and the average lifespan is only 16 years. He recounts how a man once begged for his and his child's lives before being executed by gang members. Because the area is filled with corpses, it became known as the City of Funerals, a place where only the strongest survive. He explains that the Undertakers of Rio control all illegal activities in the region, and boasts that hundreds of their strongest members are currently present in the hospital. Nathaniel smiles at Peter, claiming he sees great potential in him, and compares the protagonist to a tiger cub that could grow into a powerful predator under his mentorship. He tells Peter to stop playing the hero for his classmate, and invites him to join his ranks to become stronger. When Peter simply shrugs, Nathaniel coldly acknowledges that the protagonist has chosen his path. 2 members, Raffalo and a B-rank fighter named Sao Paulo, charge at Peter. Without moving from his spot, the protagonist pulls out a pen and strikes both attackers with precise blows to their vital points, causing them to collapse instantly. As everyone, including Yuna, watches in shock, Nathaniel realizes that Peter successfully eliminated his opponents without even looking at them. The protagonist turns his gaze toward the doctor, and asks if he still views him the same way. Nathaniel asks Peter if he knows how long it takes for someone to die. He says it takes 1 minute and 12 seconds if an artery is cut, 40 seconds if a vein is cut, and 12 seconds if the carotid artery is severed. He then says that, on average, it takes about a minute to kill someone. Since Peter is up against 100 killers, Nathaniel wonders if he will be able to survive for 100 minutes. The gang closes in on Peter. One of them says that he has been dying for this moment. Another says that the country is far too peaceful. Another says that he finally feels alive again. One of them shouts for the little brat to come on. As two of the gang members rush forward, Peter takes them down instantly. The others continue advancing without hesitation. One of them says that they will never forget the sacrifice of their brothers, and that the little boy is not taking them down. Another yells for everyone to charge. Yuna becomes worried. She thinks that Peter is in serious danger. They have him cornered, yet they do not even flinch after seeing their comrades die. They show no sign of slowing down. One of the gang members asks why the little boy looks so scared. He says they have all grown up together since they were born. Another says the doctor lived a comfortable life, so he would never understand them. Another says they have seen death around them every single day. Peter dodges their attacks with ease. Nathaniel remarks that Peter is quite good at dodging. He says that being swift is impressive, but dodging alone will not get him anywhere. He points out that Sungu has run out of escape routes, with dozens of killers blocking every path, and asks what he plans to do now. Peter calmly says that there is no doubt he is outnumbered, but honestly, that only makes things better for him. The gang members become confused and wonder what he is doing. Peter grabs a fire hose. A powerful stream of water suddenly blasts out. He asks why they look so frightened, and says that he is only getting started. The force of the water knocks the gang members off their feet, sending them crashing to the ground. Water continues dripping from the fire hose. Peter remarks that the slip and slide is probably enough for now. The gang members struggle to get back up. Nathaniel admits that using the fire hose was clever, but says it cannot actually kill anyone. One of the gang members asks if Peter really thought that would be enough to stop them. Peter glances at the defibrillator nearby. He picks up its two shock paddles and rubs them together, making it clear that he is only getting started, and that it is time to make his move. He thrusts the defibrillator paddles into the water. The electric current instantly spreads through the water, electrocuting everyone standing in it. The gang members are struck by the electric shock and collapse to the ground one after another. Water continues dripping across the flooded floor. Nathaniel admits that Peter continues to impress him. He realizes that the protagonist deliberately lures everyone into one corner of the room so he can use the fire hose, then follows it up with a defibrillator to electrocute them. He thinks that our boy is full of surprises. Nathaniel takes back what he said earlier about it taking 100 minutes. He points out that the protagonist has already taken down half of them, and still has an entire hall full of enemies left. Peter thinks that Nathaniel expected it to take him nearly 2 hours to defeat them all, but he is not so sure about that. Peter notices a medical chart nearby and picks it up. The remaining gang members wonder what he is writing. Peter marks the chart and throws it toward them. The gang members see it and wonder what it is. The chart shows a human body from the front, back, left, and right sides, with red cross marks indicating vital points. Peter demonstrates that they do not even recognize an autopsy chart, despite calling themselves hospital personnel. He explains that a stab to the carotid artery causes massive bleeding, and that the same cause of death will soon appear on all of their autopsy reports. As he finishes, he hurls his pen toward them. One of the gang members realizes that they have underestimated him, and that it is already too late. Peter charges at the remaining members with nothing but his pen. He rapidly strikes one fighter after another, taking them down in quick succession. The gang members are sent crashing backward as they fall one after another. Watching the entire fight, Yuna remembers the story she has always heard about the strongest man in the world. He is spoken of as a legend by everyone around her. However, the legend is nothing like the heroic story she has heard. He appears to be nothing more than an ordinary old man and a tenacious fighter. He does not resemble the legendary killer who supposedly fought thousands of enemies alone. She realizes that not every rumor can be believed, but if the rumors are true, and this is what Peter is really like, then she understands that this must be exactly what everyone else witnessed. After the 100 fighters are defeated, Nathaniel praises Peter. He remarks that choosing him was the right decision, and that it took our boy only 30 minutes to defeat 100 men. Peter makes it clear that he is still not finished. Nathaniel becomes confused. Peter points out that Nathaniel is still alive. He asks whether the antagonist is going to come to him, or if he should go to him instead. Nathaniel leaps down from above. The impact cracks the floor beneath his feet. A sinister smile spreads across his face, and a dangerous gleam appears in his eyes as he makes it clear that Peter already knows his answer. Nathaniel watches Peter with deep suspicion, struggling to comprehend how someone so young can display such immense skill. He briefly wonders if the young man is a professional killer from abroad, but he quickly dismisses the idea due to Peter's youth. The protagonist counters this by noting that he has his own curiosities, observing that people who lack confidence often feel the need to talk the most. He offers a smile, reminding his opponent that there is a very thin line between confidence and arrogance. Nathaniel lunges forward with incredible speed. Although Peter manages to block the strike, the sheer force behind the blow launches him into the air. While he is airborne, the protagonist is stunned by the doctor's overwhelming strength and questions whether his opponent is even human. As he lands and slides backward, he acknowledges that the situation has become dire. Watching from nearby, Yuna is shocked to see Peter thrown back despite his defensive stance, and she begins to worry about the true extent of the assailant's power. She realizes that the protagonist has already pushed himself to the limit after fighting 100 killers, and she fears he will lose if the battle continues this way. Her voice rises in desperation as she screams for him to dodge. Nathaniel picks up 2 nearby corpses and asks if our protagonist is already exhausted, mockingly claiming that the fun has only just begun. He hurls the bodies at Peter, telling him that fatigue is no excuse for failing to defend himself. The protagonist avoids the bodies and rushes toward his opponent, but Nathaniel suddenly swats him away with a single hand, sending him crashing into a wall. Peter is left reeling, having never witnessed such raw power in a human before, and he desperately wonders about the source of the doctor's strength. Tears stream down Yuna's face as she cries out for him. She watches in horror, convinced that Peter is going to die. Eventually, he slams him into an elevator and hits the button, sending them both plunging downward. Yuna watches them descend, wondering how deep the shaft goes. He explains that because the protagonist is so fast, he specifically chose this confined space to prevent any chance of escape. The elevator stops in an underground laboratory surrounded by large test tubes filled with human specimens. Nathaniel taunts Peter, asking where his fighting spirit has gone and expressing disappointment that he is just another boring opponent. High above, Yuna continues to call his name, determined to find a way to reach him. Inside the lab, the doctor demands to know who Peter really is and why he showed up instead of the person he was expecting to meet. The protagonist remains completely motionless after the exchange, leading Nathaniel to assume he has killed him, which he claims is the usual outcome of his serious fights. He grows increasingly angry, frustrated that Peter managed to dodge all of his previous attacks. Suddenly, the protagonist stands back up and offers a polite apology for his poor manners, explaining that he only took a quick nap because he found the doctor to be boring. Nathaniel stares in disbelief as Peter invites him to try again, promising that he will fight seriously this time. As the battle resumes, the protagonist senses the true weight of the fight as he tracks his opponent's incoming fist. In a separate control room, Jaiwon and a white-haired man monitor the struggle via security cameras. The man expresses surprise that Peter is being overwhelmed, but she remains calm. When asked why, she recalls a story about the protagonist from 55 years ago. A flashback reveals a group of young students gathered around an instructor who asks them to define the true source of strength. While other students offer answers like calm decision-making, weapon skills, technique, or physical power, Peter focuses on a technique capable of killing anyone. The instructor leads them to a massive boulder and tells them to break it. When the students complain that the task is impossible, the protagonist criticizes their footwork, noting that they cannot expect to shatter the rock if they cannot even move correctly. While the other students give up, Peter stays behind, striking the boulder for an entire month. When the others return, they mock him for his failure, but they soon fall silent when they realize the original boulder has been completely shattered into countless pieces. Back in the present, Nathaniel asks if Peter knows the limits of human power, citing that even the world's strongest lifter is no match for him. He questions if the protagonist is truly human or if he has received some kind of blessing. Peter asks if he has ever been hit by a car, and before he can respond, the protagonist lands a massive blow that sends him flying across the laboratory. As Nathaniel crashes into a thick storage capsule, the white-haired man watches the monitors, noting that surviving such an impact will be difficult. However, the doctor slowly climbs to his feet. He tells Peter that he will not understand why he is still alive or why the protagonist's own hand is now covered in wounds from the impact. Peter looks down to see his hand injured, and Nathaniel reminds him that he dictates the evolution of humanity. As he removes his shirt, his altered physical state is revealed, and the protagonist realizes that his opponent has turned himself into a monster. The doctor proudly declares that his transformation is the result of his evolutionary legacy. Nathaniel stares at Peter, questioning why he looks so shocked. Peter, however, thinks his opponent has completely lost his mind, wondering what exactly the doctor has done to his own body. He offers an explanation, asking if Peter has ever heard of anti-fragility. He claims that because he cannot be killed, every bit of pain he suffers only makes him stronger. As his muscles tear and recover, his body becomes even sturdier. He explains that he has developed a revolutionary drug to drastically reduce his recovery time, creating a cycle where more pain leads to greater power. He asks if Peter understands the implications. As he strides toward our protagonist, he declares that Peter's chances of defeating him are essentially zero. When his hand clamps around his neck, Peter realizes one wrong move means death. He smashes him into the floor, sending dust flying everywhere, and boasts that no one has ever survived his grip. Suddenly Peter's voice cuts through the air, congratulating him. He pauses, recalling the moment he caught Peter. He is certain he had him by the throat. He realizes with shock that in just 0.1 seconds, Peter had used his hand to create an opening and escape the chokehold. He is stunned, thinking that no ordinary human possesses reflexes that fast. Peter meanwhile feels the burning pain in his hand from that brief contact. Flashbacks of Nathaniel crushing an escaped specimen's head through a wall race through his mind, leading him to one conclusion. If the opponent catches him with both hands, he is dead. He demands that Peter show him more. A chart of Peter's abilities flashes on screen, listing strength, combat skill, willpower, intelligence, speed, and stamina. He concedes that Peter's stats belong to an A-rank killer and arguably surpass an ordinary A-rank, yet he maintains that Peter has failed to defeat him because he has been constantly evolving throughout the fight. He offers one final chance for Peter to beg like a dog, otherwise he threatens to tear him apart piece by piece. When Peter raises his hand, the doctor mistakenly believes his opponent has begun to understand his vision. Inside the security room, a white-haired man watches the monitors and notes that if Peter surrenders, they may have to abandon him to avoid exposure. He claims that from the first moment he saw him, he knew Peter was different. Peter responds calmly, saying that enough is enough. It is time to try a different approach. He tells Nathaniel that his obsession with strength has completely clouded his judgment. When he asks what he is doing, Peter replies that there is only one way to deal with a child throwing a tantrum, giving him a proper spanking. He grins, mockingly praising this intimidating attitude. The two immediately charge, their fists colliding repeatedly as the intensity escalates. Watching the monitors, the white-haired man admits he no longer understands what he is witnessing, noting only that this is no longer a fight between ordinary humans. As they exchange blows, he recognizes that Peter is truly powerful and unlike any opponent he has ever faced. He is excited by his own evolution but remains bothered by a nagging question. Peter has already proven his strength, yet he hides something beyond his stats. He wonders what gives our hero the confidence to keep fighting without a hint of hesitation. Finally, he decides that resistance is futile. He declares he will rip Peter apart, extracting every bone, muscle, and cell. As he swings his fist, the white-haired man screams, and G1 cries out in desperation, realizing the opponent is about to deliver a killing blow. Amidst the fight, Peter recalls the doctor's logic. Muscle damage leads to larger, stronger recovery, and he has weaponized this with his drug. Peter reveals he has been waiting for this exact moment, waiting for the opponent to reach his peak. Suddenly he realizes something is wrong. Peter explains that once the muscles hit their limit, they expanded so much they began compressing Nathaniel's own bones and nerves. Consequently, his body has become completely immobile. He tries to move but finds himself frozen. He realizes he never noticed his body hardening because he was too absorbed in the battle. He is shocked that Peter diagnosed the side effects of his artificial evolution in just a few minutes. As his fist hangs midair, Peter declares that he has lost and follows up with a powerful kick that sends him crashing backward. He thinks of the lives he took and the pain he endured to transform into the perfect human. He cannot accept dying at the hands of a mere boy, so he reaches for his final option. He knows the drug in his hidden capsule will melt his muscles but transform him into the ultimate living organism. He swallows it, warning Peter that he deserves to witness the final stage of evolution and that they will both die in 3 minutes. As they clash again, his thoughts race. Even with his fists at maximum power, Peter reads every movement with ease. It feels as if he is fighting an army, not one person. He finally understands the missing piece. The wall separating them is experience. He cannot fathom how someone so young could possess such overwhelming combat history. Peter reminds him of the one man he spent his life trying to surpass, the strongest, godlike man in the world. As the battle draws to a close, a chilling thought occurs to him. Is this actually Apostle Peter? Nathaniel's memories drift back to the year 2002. Inside the Grand Hall of the Glory Club, portraits line the walls as doctors gather to take their solemn oath. They swear to volunteer for mankind, maintaining their medical conscience and dignity regardless of any personal harm. One observer finds the display incredible, while another doubts such a thing is truly possible. A woman explains that these are representatives at the entrance ceremony of the Divine Honor Medical University. Among them is a young Nathaniel, then known by his real name, Naeun, Illinois. Though recognized as a genius who entered medical school at age 13, he feels no happiness. The scene shifts to August 1994. Inside a pediatric ward, children gather around a man dressed as Santa Claus, asking for presents. Naeun lies on a hospital bed, attached to medical drips. When someone suggests he should also receive a gift, the patient reflects on his existence. He believes his frail birth was a choice made by God, and he wonders about the purpose behind being born so weak. A television program about evolution plays, showing a creature shedding its old shell to grow stronger. Seeing this, the boy wonders if God is instructing him to do the same. Because humans cannot naturally evolve like animals, he decides he will become the person to achieve that impossible feat. By the year 2012, a patient who was shot and went into cardiac arrest is rushed into the hospital. Junior doctors and nurses prepare for emergency heart surgery, whispering about the patient being a serial killer. The junior doctor wonders why anyone would treat such a person, but the nurse remarks that the willingness to treat him is what makes the surgeons amazing. The operation is performed by Naeun. During the surgery, the lead doctor finds the moral fuss surrounding the patient strange, as he views it as mere work. Yet, his heart beats faster than ever before. He realizes the patient possesses an incredibly strong body and becomes fascinated, curious about the difference between himself and this man. He fights the urge to explore that power, reminding himself of his duty to preserve mankind. He tries to convince himself that his existence is a blessing, but another thought takes hold. He believes that poorly made humans hinder evolution and that he should take the lead. It is time for him to shed his own skin. He is tired of being weak and wants to know what it feels like to possess such strength. Before he can stop himself, he realizes he has opened the patient's brain, blood spreading across the floor. After losing everything, Nathaniel hides in a small South American city, where the abundance of bodies allows him to conduct his research. He proves his theories by observing various phenomena, using the killing of strong people as proof of his own growth. He reinforces his own body without using his father's DNA or a mother's womb, believing he has become a new form of mankind. In the present, Peter throws Nathaniel behind a wall. The antagonist realizes his spine is shattered and his muscles have ruptured, leaving him unable to move. Peter warns him that moving will only hasten his death. Nathaniel asks the protagonist how he can be defeated, explaining that he has spent 30 years dedicating every day to becoming stronger. Peter explains that there are things he can never copy. While he acknowledges the villain's tenacity, Peter reveals he has invested 65 years of hard work. The doctor is shocked by this revelation, realizing that while there is much he does not understand as a doctor, he is at least fortunate to meet Peter before he dies. At Yongguang Hospital, the battle concludes as the bodies of the Brazilian killers are cleared away. All information regarding the blooded killers is erased from the hospital system. In a car, the Dako brothers speak with Mr. Lee, asking if it is time for them to rank up to C rank. The mentor dismisses their request, noting that it is not that easy, and tells them to remove their fake casts. When the siblings laugh and claim they were using method acting, Biggie suggests he should have seen them fighting. Yuna responds with sarcasm when asked to acknowledge their bravery, though she clarifies it is just her way of showing appreciation. Peter watches Yuna, who feels a strange unhappiness despite their victory. She remembers Nathaniel claiming he could save her younger brother, Eugene, with a 4.5 billion won blood serum. When Peter asks if she is thinking of her brother, Yuna lies, claiming she is only worried about missing school lunch. She notes that the serum is gone anyway since the scientist destroyed it. Peter tells her that he believes she will find another way to save Eugene, and she thanks him. The car stops near a playground in Korea. As they exit, Peter asks Yuna about a tied-up case in the car. She realizes it is not hers, and wonders if the coach left it. She opens the case to find laboratory storage equipment for formulas and tubes. Surprised, she asks Peter how he knows her brother's name, and our boy explains that the deceased did not actually destroy the serums. Yuna holds the case and cries. Back at the hospital, a mysterious man stands by a large hole in the floor with his assistant. The subordinate confirms that all patients have been moved, and the media remains unaware of the incident. The leader questions whether the traces left behind were truly made by humans, and asks if Peter is responsible. When the follower mentions that the protagonist appears and disappears like a ghost, two other men appear. One of them strikes the aide down with a sword for using such a term. He calls the fallen doctor's death disgraceful because he died before receiving recognition. The swordsman, identified as the sword ghost, decides that Peter needs to be taught a lesson. Mr. Lee gathers Peter, Yuna, and the Daiko brothers to announce that they are beginning their volunteer service. Biggie notes they just finished their last mission and are already being assigned another, while Junior remarks on the difficulties of being so popular. After he asks if the task involves assassination or espionage, Yuna sighs, wishing the month would simply end. Mr. Lee admits he is unsure why they were given this specific assignment, but explains that the volunteer club exists for this reason, so they must do their best. Upon arriving at Ewell School, Biggie is confused, and Junior asks about the nature of the location. Yuna points out that they are there to volunteer as instructed by the coach. As children gather around the brothers and start climbing on them, the siblings wonder if they are expected to do actual manual labor. When someone asks Yuna about the pair, she dismisses them as a bunch of boneheads. She then warns them not to be disappointed because this work is necessary for their club to be officially recognized by the school. The Daiko brothers drop to the ground and flail, complaining that they did not come to glory for such menial tasks. They refuse to perform what they call pity work, questioning why superstars like them would be forced into it. A pretty teacher named Yejin approaches, and as soon as the siblings see her, they scramble up and frantically start pulling weeds. They boast about being the best volunteers and urge her to leave the work to them, but Yejin quickly stops them because they are actually pulling up flowers. Yuna asks if there is no cure for their buffoonery, and Peter replies that there is not. Yuna expresses frustration that the coach sent them over 300 miles away for this, but Peter reminds the group that they are there to volunteer and should avoid causing trouble or revealing their identities. As Peter walks away, Yuna notices he seems unusually downcast. Meanwhile, the brothers ask Yejin if she is a student. When she identifies herself as a teacher, Biggie tells her not to develop feelings for them because they are students. Yuna sighs, remarking that the clowns have returned to their usual behavior. A security guard arrives and welcomes the volunteers to the only school in the rural area. He and Yejin share a joke, leaving Peter and Yuna looking on with confused expressions. Yuna notes that the grounds are already green and asks if there is more work to do. The guard leads them around back, describing the area as a pigsty. As they walk, Yuna realizes something is wrong and questions why they were sent so far just for cleaning. Two neighborhood thugs arrive and demand rent money from the security guard. The man explains that the school earns very little and can barely afford heating. The criminals sarcastically remark that everyone is struggling, so the guard offers them a basket covered with a cloth. When a thug opens it to find homegrown potatoes, he becomes enraged. He shoves the guard, scattering the potatoes, and mocks them for offering such a worthless gift. Yejin tries to intervene, but the attackers claim the school is violating their contract. As Peter starts toward the group, Yuna reminds him that they are not supposed to get involved. Yejin tells the thugs they are living on government benefits, but one grabs her and suggests she can earn money in other ways because of her looks. Biggie steps in, declaring that men should protect women rather than hit them. The larger thug immediately punches him in the face. Yejin begs them to stop, but the brother, blood running from his nose, claims he only felt like he was bitten by a mosquito. A fight breaks out, and the brothers are eventually shown badly beaten on stretchers. Yejin apologizes, but Junior tells her to worry about the thugs instead. The guard explains that these men constantly harass the locals for money. Later, Yejin thanks the group for cleaning the school and invites them to stay the night. Peter approaches Biggie to check on him, noting that he has matured. Peter remarks that true strength is knowing when to hold back, a quality he saw in him today. Biggie insists that men should never watch a woman cry, and when Yejin tries to speak, Junior dismisses her because they are talking to Peter. That night, Yuna sits on a swing thinking about the serum she found in her luggage. Peter approaches, and she jumps in surprise. She wonders why he appears out of nowhere, but he ignores the question. Yuna decides to bring up the serum, but Peter thanks her for protecting him at the park instead of the hospital. He mentions that he knows she was scared, but showed courage. Yuna dismisses the praise and asks if he is related to the other Peter, noting his incredible strength. She expresses frustration that someone as powerful as him is ranked as a mere D-rank killer. Peter promises to explain everything when the time is right. Yuna attempts to thank him, but they fall into a back and forth because Peter claims he cannot hear her. After she eventually shouts her thanks, Peter tells her to calm down, leading Yuna to accuse him of provoking her on purpose. Peter reflects that the group is maturing, and decides it is time to wrap things up. He heads to the security room to speak with the guard. Inside, Peter asks if he can help further, but the man stops him. The guard reveals that he has lived around the scent of blood for decades, and knows the protagonist is not just a student. He states that he reeks of bloodshed. Peter admits that volunteering was the only way to arrive without attracting attention. He reveals that he came specifically to find Apostle Simon. The guard removes his gloves, and Peter identifies him as the spirit swordmaster and Glory's greatest swordsman. Simon tells our boy that his research was thorough, but warns him that he will not be leaving the school alive. Swinging a sword typically leaves a small gap in a fighter's defense, which serves as a prime opening for a counterattack. Simon, however, fights as if he can read his opponent's mind, leaving absolutely no room for a retaliation. Neither immense strength nor rapid speed can bypass his defense, and as he swings his blade, he slices through all of Peter's canes with ease. In an instant, the spiral sword master corners Peter, completely restricting his movement with a shield of blades. Peter remarks that he wants to see if the apostle truly deserves his reputation as the world's greatest, the spiral swordmaster, Apostle Simon. He replies that Peter should be proud, as the protagonist is one of only 2 people he has never managed to defeat within 10 moves. Simon advances once more and cuts through the remaining canes, but Peter ducks to avoid the strike. During the clash, the swordsman notes that people cannot hide their natural habits, such as their scent, their gait, their speech, or even their breathing. Although he was initially skeptical, this fight has confirmed his suspicions. The apostle then kneels respectfully and greets Peter as his great brother. As Peter remains standing, the swordsman admits that he had been certain of his brother's death, and confesses how much he has missed him, noting that our boy appears to have returned to his youth. The two sit on a large rock nearby, and Peter admits that he struggles to believe the situation himself. When the apostle asks if this means Peter can finally return to the playground where he once slipped, the protagonist asks him to drop the embarrassing subject. Simon observes that Peter looks healthier and better than he did in his previous life, specifically noting his dark, healthy hair. Peter says he simply woke up that way, then expresses relief that he was right about the fighter's identity. He praises the apostle's skill, admitting he feared he had been killed during their spar. Simon explains he never would have harmed Peter because he recognized him immediately, even though the protagonist points out that the blade was held right at his throat. The apostle notes that he has not changed over the years, though he jokes that his sword has become dusty from constant use, and credits all his technique to Peter's teachings. When the swordsman asks how Peter found him in this rural town, the protagonist asks if he heard about the commotion involving Nathaniel at Yongguang Hospital. Simon confirms he heard the news, and realizes in surprise that Peter was responsible for the feat, praising his strength and bravery. When asked why he did it, Peter reveals his plan to completely eradicate Glory. Worried, the apostle warns that the plan is too dangerous, even for Peter. He offers to join the fight, pledging to slice their enemies apart, but the protagonist tells him to stay behind and focus on maintaining the school grounds. Simon protests, arguing that he belongs by Peter's side, and asks if our boy is truly willing to abandon the years he spent in hiding. The swordsman recalls the night that forced him into exile, expressing regret that Peter stopped him from acting against their enemy back then. Peter remembers the past, 60 years ago, when Father Gabriel founded the orphanage. 12 children, including the protagonist, were selected and forced to survive on dirt, enduring brutal training that turned them into wild beasts. These survivors became the 12 apostles, secret agents who eventually influenced the world alongside Glory. Everything changed when Father Gabriel took in an adopted son whose true identity remained a mystery. Eventually, that boy seized the crown, and when an enraged the apostle wanted to kill him, Peter stopped him, insisting it was not yet their time. The protagonist explains that under this leader, Glory became a corrupt house of bloodshed. The man is identified as the one wearing a large mask with a queen tattoo on his back. Returning to the present, the apostle asserts that while he lacked power in the past, he now possesses the strength of his youth. He tells Peter to watch from the sidelines as he destroys their kingdom and the man responsible. Simon then departs. The next morning at Yule's school, the Doko brothers observe Peter surrounded by children and express frustration that the children favor him despite the brothers doing the work. Eugene mentions that she worried about the thugs returning, but the brothers assure her they will not come back. They explain that they forced the thugs to apologize and warn them that returning would mean facing a high-level killer. The thugs, terrified, promise to leave forever and dedicate themselves to being better members of the community. The brothers tell Eugene not to worry about their methods and prepare to leave. By the shore, Simon and Eugene thank them for the memories, and the brothers express gratitude for the hospitality. The apostle says goodbye, noting that the school will cherish these memories. Eugene invites them to visit every year, and the brothers are surprised by her kindness. Before leaving, Simon tells Peter to call him if he ever needs his support. Peter thanks him and tells him to be safe. Rain begins to fall and thunder rumbles. In the security room, the guard notices that there have been too many unexpected guests lately. A group of mysterious people arrives, including the woman who attacked the hospital, who identifies herself as the sword ghost and draws her blade. Simon approaches, noting they are not there for volunteer work. The woman recognizes him as the imposter Simon taken in by Glory, and introduces herself as the Sword Phantom, the best swordsman in Japan, while her companion acknowledges his reputation. When the apostle asks if they came for his title, the woman dismisses the idea, stating they were only hired for a large sum of money. The fighter feels sorry that they will not be paid, and corrects their assumption that he is merely the best in Korea, declaring himself the true spiral swordmaster. Her companion suggests the trip was worth it. Simon invites them to proceed, stating that one side will not leave the encounter alive. A battle erupts between Simon and the Sword Phantom as their blades clash repeatedly. The Phantom notes that despite the fame surrounding the spiral swordmaster, he is not as impressive as she expected, and wonders if age has dulled his edge. Simon responds with sarcasm, admitting that he and his sword have grown a bit rusty, but he notes that if he were at his peak, she would already be dead. She ignores this, sprays herself with perfume, and warns the old man not to be arrogant. Simon acknowledges that her technique is extraordinary, but his concern grows for the large man accompanying her. He realizes that if he must fight both of them, he needs more space. As the two move forward, he warns the Phantom not to vandalize school property, threatening to find her. She dismisses his concern, stating that she intended to find him anyway because he will be dead soon. She swings her blade with blinding speed, shattering a window and forcing the fight out into a bamboo forest. The Phantom curses the old man for being sneaky as he retreats. Her companion worries about her fighting in the heavy rain, but she tells him not to worry. Simon moves quickly through the downpour, searching for his opponent. He observes that her weapon is not a true sword, but a sword designed to tear flesh. She may not slash often, but every hit digs deep. More importantly, he feels that something is wrong and that the pair is hiding a secret. They arrive at the edge of a cliff, where the Phantom remarks that Simon enjoys drama, calling this the perfect spot for a heroic death. When he asks if she knows why he is called the Spiral Swordmaster, she says she does not care and urges him to finish the fight quickly because she is busy. Her companion tells her to stand back as things are about to get dangerous. Simon agrees, stating that he does not need to explain his power because he can simply show them. He activates his Spiral Swordmaster, causing the rain, the waves, and the air around him to stop, leaving only the spiral in motion. The companion watches in shock while the Phantom wonders what is happening. Simon unleashes a flurry of strikes toward her neck, waist, legs, and arms. Her companion realizes that the protagonist's slashes are connecting to form one continuous path, and he acknowledges that this overwhelming power is why the world once feared the sword. Simon stops and thanks the Phantom for a real match, noting that she is truly the best swordsman in Japan. He then turns his attention to the large man, telling him it is his turn. The Phantom lies defeated on the ground, and her companion steps forward. He compliments the former Imperial swordsman on his skill, noting that he would have been a formidable opponent had he not retired, but he declares that it is too late now. Simon asks what he means and claims he is the one who will be defeated. Suddenly Simon notices a deep, bleeding cut on his stomach. He wonders how it happened, as it should not be possible. The companion mocks him, asking if he really thought he had one. Simon looks closely at the Phantom, feeling as if she were a ghost, and watches in confusion as her body distorts before she slowly stands back up. He realizes that the perfume induced a hallucination. He asserts that he has seen every trick in the book and tells them to try something harder. He concludes that if he is seeing a vision, he simply has to stop looking. He has performed his technique enough times that illusions mean nothing to him. The companion moves towards Simon, terrified that the old master has been rendered harmless. He closes his eyes and swings his sword through the air, telling the spirit to leave. The Phantom mocks the old man for being finished, and explains that she is called the Sword Phantom because she is a spirit who wields a wild sword. Back at Yongwang School, the Doko brothers, Yuna and Peter, are in a classroom. Biggie asks if love is always this painful, showing his friends that Miss Eugene has stopped replying to his texts. Yuna finds it creepy and tells him she does not blame her, but he insists that she was an angel who used to reply to everyone. He explains that she stopped responding after sending a picture yesterday that showed a woman with a sword and a man built like a bear. Biggie asks Yuna how to handle a woman acting this way, but insults her in the process. Yuna grabs them both by their collars, and he struggles to breathe. Peter then calls Jaiwon to ask if she is free. Peter and Jaiwon meet at a waterside location with a white-haired man. She complains about the freezing temperature and the smell of salt water. Our boy places a box with a picture on the ground, and his dog reacts immediately. Jaiwon is surprised by the dog's behavior. Peter remembers his conversation with Simon and regrets not keeping him by his side. They open the box to find a detached arm belonging to Simon with a note that says, "Dear Peter." The protagonist is left in shock. Meanwhile, someone watches them through a telescope from a distance. A person on the phone asks if the target received the gift, and the observer confirms. When asked if the target is Peter, the observer identifies him alongside a white-haired man, a girl, and a dog. As the observer speaks, the protagonist appears behind him and takes the phone. The voice on the other end is revealed to be the Sword Phantom. Peter asks if she is the new member of Glory and tells her he is flattered. He then grabs the hand of the man attacking him and twists it until it cracks. While holding the attacker, our boy tells the Sword Phantom that she better keep Simon alive, warning her that if Simon is dead, she will face a slow and painful demise. Peter stands on a yacht and checks in with Jaiwon over the phone. When she asks if he will be all right, he confidently assures her that he is. She presses him for details on his destination, wondering if he is headed toward his house. But Peter simply focuses on a photograph of a large yacht that arrived in a box. Jaiwon explains the danger of the situation by noting that every vessel in the world is registered with specific names and identification. Yet there is one ship that keeps all such information hidden. She identifies this vessel as the Ghost Cruise and warns Peter that the people who kidnapped Apostle Simon are currently aboard that boat, protected by a total shroud of secrecy. Peter reveals he knows exactly where they acquired the ship. He explains that while Korea has Glory, Japan maintains a similar organization of killers that has operated since the Kamakura shogunate, known as the Katoryu. He recounts their most infamous act, the missing case, where two of their swordmasters infiltrated a banquet and slaughtered 200 members of the Yamato-gumi Yakuza gang. Jaiwon acknowledges the incident but questions why it was labeled a mere missing case when it was clearly a massacre. Peter clarifies that the battle was so efficient that not a single body was left behind. Although the Japanese police issued warrants for the killers, they vanished like ghosts, only to resurface now in Korea. He identifies the woman in charge as the new Simon of Glory. Jaiwon expresses deep concern that Peter is volunteering to hunt a swordmaster who was once part of Simon's own group. She cautions him that the vast ocean is a place where no one would ever find his body if he failed, and she offers her assistance. Peter dismisses the danger, declaring that he will ensure they pay the price for harming his comrade regardless of the odds. He mentions that he is not acting alone, but before he can elaborate, the Daiko brothers interrupt by shouting from behind him. They complain that they knew Peter would try to hog the spotlight and grumble about their forced disguise as security guards. Peter reminds them he told them to stay behind, but they insist on coming, with Biggie noting that a killer views death as a badge of honor. Chairman Eun Jung Choi of the massive Daiha group arrives and greets Peter, asking how he likes the yacht. Peter suggests the chairman head inside to stay warm. The Daiko brothers use the opportunity to badger the chairman about their attire, claiming they did not join the Glory Club just to clean up after board members. As they watch, he explains that the Ghost Cruise is a place where people buy anything from drugs and weapons to rare artwork and even living humans. He emphasizes that wealth alone cannot grant entry to this exclusive vessel. Peter thanks him, and the chairman points out their destination. As the massive Ghost Cruise comes into view, Peter prepares to confront the Sword Phantom and make her answer for her actions. Aboard the cruise, a guest from the Dusan group begins berating a waitress and demanding to see her boss. The Sword Phantom arrives with her companion and warns the man not to insult her staff. She explains that everyone there calls her a monster, a reputation solidified by her status as an A-rank apostle and the title of Sword Phantom. When the president of the Dusan group threatens to use his influence to ruin her, she calmly invites him to discuss matters in her room, hinting that she can provide him with a heightened experience. As he mocks the offer, she touches him, causing him to collapse in shock. She orders her companion to toss the man into the ocean, and then shifts her focus to Peter. She muses that since he received her gift, he will surely show up, and she eagerly anticipates killing him to cash out. Elsewhere on the deck, the Daiko brothers wander through the club, marveling at the luxury and the wealthy guests. They decide to lean into their roles as security guards, cleaning with such intensity that they impress a wealthy guest. The man tips them 1 million won for their efforts, which sends them into a frenzy of excitement as they realize the potential for quick riches. Their moment of excitement is cut short when the Sword Phantom emerges from an elevated position to address the crowd. Peter watches her and realizes she is the woman Simon described in his note, the new Simon of Glory. The auction begins with the introduction of the Podorak, a compact biochemical bomb abandoned by the Soviet Union for being too dangerous. Peter wonders how she could have possibly defeated a man like Simon if she does not appear to have the physical presence of a warrior. The guests debate the origin of the weapon until an elderly man, identified as the Russian weapon merchant Viktor Igorov, shouts in fury. He accuses the Sword Phantom of stealing his property and orders his 2 massive bodyguards to seize her. As the bodyguards advance, the companion blocks their path. The guards ignore the warning and try to push past him, but in an instant, both men are lying on the ground, their bodies trembling and melting from an unknown force. The guests are horrified, but the Sword Phantom simply apologizes for the interruption and announces that bidding for the Podarak will start at $20 billion the following night. She also teases that a second, even more incredible item will be revealed at that time. As the crowd disperses in anticipation, Peter prepares to leave. The companion asks if Peter is present, and she replies that they will find out tomorrow. Chairman Choi admits he is hungry, and Peter agrees to join him for a meal. Peter warns the chairman to remain vigilant, noting that the Sword Phantom is the most diabolical person he has ever encountered. The Sword Phantom suddenly approaches them and confronts the chairman, mocking his past refusal of her invitations. When she grabs his tie to invite him to dinner, the chairman tries to decline, but Peter steps forward and offers to take his place. Caught off guard, the Sword Phantom sprays her perfume and accepts the offer for a dinner date, warning Peter to prepare for a rough night. The Sword Phantom approaches our protagonist in an unusual way, lightly tapping his chest before taking a moment to straighten her tie. As she does this, the scent she carries hits Peter, forcing him to consider the nature of her influence. The Sword Phantom is convinced that all men are fundamentally the same. She believes her scent is so potent that it leaves them completely entranced, blind to whatever danger she might be bringing their way. At that moment, the Dako brothers emerge from behind, stepping forward to introduce themselves as the new training crew. Peter stands in the background, clearly troubled and confused by the sudden arrival of these two. They introduce themselves as Biggie and Junior Dako, boastfully claiming they are ready to kill or clean anything that needs tending to, and they urge her to provide an order. A brief disagreement breaks out between them, with one brother pushing the other aside while insisting the master clearly favors him. Watching this display, Peter is taken aback by the absurdity of the situation. The Sword Phantom turns back to him, lightly pats his face, and tells our boy that he got lucky before walking away. Left alone, Peter reflects on the encounter, struggling to understand how he nearly lost control of his own senses in that brief moment. As he wonders how she managed to manipulate him so quickly, a new thought crosses his mind. Meanwhile, the Dako brothers tell Peter that they will keep the space spotless, even joking about cleaning his feet if necessary. They are clearly excited, chatting about the $1,000 tip the Sword Phantom promised them if they keep the area pristine. As they start their cleaning, Peter continues to dwell on how easily he was compromised. Elsewhere, the Sword Phantom relaxes in the water while her companion stands behind a large pillar, facing away. She asks if he is curious about the steaminess of the environment, leading him to ask for clarification. She notes that an old man in his 70s managed to destroy 100 killers, wondering how such a feat is possible against opponents at their peak. When her companion asks if she is certain that individual was actually Peter, she challenges his skepticism. He explains that the ship is heavily guarded by radars and that the old man is clearly not on board, leading him to wonder if someone is merely disguised as the protagonist. The Sword Phantom splashes the water, declaring that if an imposter is indeed using Peter's identity to interfere with the organization, she will uncover the truth. When asked how she intends to reach them, she mentions they have resources at their disposal. She remains indifferent to whether the person is a man or a woman, admitting she was simply curious about his appearance, and she dismisses her companion's suspicion that she might have developed an interest in someone else. Peter moves through the cruise ship while reflecting on a past conversation with Simon. Simon had admitted that the protagonist was the only family he had left, and insisted he would be the one to take the fall if it meant Peter could survive. The protagonist had pushed back, telling his friend to stop worrying and focus on his health so they could eventually fulfill the promise they made years ago. Simon had been surprised that Peter remembered, and the two had shared a moment over his secret smoking habit. Now Peter realizes that Simon is truly his family, and he feels compelled to take any number of lives if it will lead him to his friend. He concludes that with everyone's attention focused on the auction in the bathroom area, this is his best chance to find him. As his trolley comes to a stop, two men approach him, suspicious of an Asian waiter being on the ship. When they attempt to check the trolley and realize something is wrong, they speculate that he might be the person the shipmaster is hunting. Recognizing them as pirates, Peter acts quickly, throwing one of the men into the trolley and pushing forward. He continues to search the kitchen, the engine room, and every corner of the ship, but finds no trace of Simon. He eventually realizes there is only one place left to check. The next day, the auction begins. The Sword Phantom presents the first item, a Monet Martin masterpiece from 1780, explaining its history as a lost wedding gift for Princess Augusta. After a brief bidding war, she announces that Senior Foshari has won the piece for $1.35 million. She then shifts the focus to the final, special highlight of the auction. A large, heavily guarded safe is brought into the room, causing the guests to speculate wildly about its contents. The Sword Phantom dismisses the value of chemical weapons and jewelry, claiming this item was once more cherished by heaven than any painting. She opens the safe to reveal the former apostle, Simon. His hand has been severed and his body is chained. The guests are horrified and stunned to see the legendary Spiral Swordmaster, with some questioning why she would auction off a corpse. The Sword Phantom stares toward the room, silently challenging Peter to reveal himself, convinced that his rage will force him out of hiding and into her reach. Sword Phantom watches the crowd and announces that the auction has reached its highlight. Her companion asks if she has located Peter. She replies that she has, but also that she has not. She feels certain he is in the crowd because the sharp, vicious hostility directed at her feels like a blade pointed toward her. Although she briefly wonders if she is mistaken, she dismisses the thought entirely, decides it does not matter, and turns her focus back to the auction. She announces the start of bidding for Apostle Simon at $10 million. She tells the audience that if no one bids on the Swordmaster, he will die immediately, but those who cannot resist bidding should be prepared to remove him before he expires. Silently, she assumes Peter is already dead. Peter watches in silence, his forehead bulging with tension as he realizes Sword Phantom is using Simon as bait. He knows he lacks the funds to bid, and even if he had the money, placing a bid would expose his identity. He feels trapped by the number of eyes watching him, and desperately searches for a way to rescue his companion. Sword Phantom pats Simon on the head, mockingly noting that the man who was once Glory's greatest apostle, worth more than a nuclear weapon, is now just a useless lump of flesh. She lifts his head and taunts him, suggesting it must hurt to know his own comrade has abandoned him. When no one bids, she sarcastically asks if they are avoiding the prisoner because he has damaged goods. She announces she will dispose of him if no one acts and begins a countdown. Just before she reaches zero, Chairman Choi of the Deja Group bids $20 million in cash. Sword Phantom grows suspicious. She wonders why the chairman, the supposed right-hand man of Glory's boss, is interfering. She accepts the bid, and finding no higher offers, congratulates him while privately suspecting he is hiding something. Later, Peter and Chairman Choi stand beside the resting Simon. When the elder asks if this is the man Peter sought, the protagonist confirms it, but expresses concern that the high-profile bid has endangered the chairman. He dismisses the guilt, explaining that his long-standing ties to Glory make the bid appear normal, and that buying Simon was the only way to avoid Sword Phantom's trap. Peter realizes they are in a difficult spot. While buying Simon saved his life, it has confirmed Sword Phantom's suspicions. Chairman Choi notes that staying on the ship is now extremely dangerous, and Peter agrees that there was never a safe way to leave. When the older man asks for an exit strategy, the protagonist reveals he has a hidden Joker card. Peter finds the Daco brothers in the corridor, now dressed in expensive clothes and sunglasses. When he asks what happened to them, they explain that being a killer does not pay the bills and encourage the protagonist to follow their lead to get rich. Peter reminds them they came to become legendary killers, and they admit they got carried away by the luxury lifestyle. They boast that even the floors they clean are surrounded by luxury brands, though they acknowledge this path will not make them legends. Peter tells them something dangerous is happening, and they are the only ones who can stop it. Learning they have cleaned every corner of the ship, the protagonist assigns them a special A-rank mission. Peter looks at Simon and recalls a memory of them sitting on a playground, watching children play football. The prisoner expresses a wish to be an ordinary student, to wear a school uniform, and to eat a lunch packed by his mother. Peter tells him not to talk nonsense because children like them could never attend a normal school. Simon smiles sadly, acknowledging that a killer cannot dream, but asks the protagonist to forget he ever said it. Peter suggests they build their own school for children with no money or home, promising to lend his brother his textbooks for free. Simon refuses, stating he wants to buy his own books. Back in the present, Peter gently shakes the Swordmaster and pleads with his brother to wake up, reminding him of their promise to go to school together. Chairman Choi overhears this from outside the room. Meanwhile, a barefoot Sword Phantom complains that the chairman ruined her plan. She rejects her companion's suggestion that the boss is the true master of the ship, declaring herself the master and ordering her men to surround the room and kill both the prisoner and the chairman. She believes killing them will force Peter to reveal himself. A knock sounds at the door. Chairman Choi wonders who is there, but Peter calmly says it must be room service and offers to answer. The protagonist returns holding only tea, explaining that he sent the food back because the steak was too cold. Chairman Choi jokes that he must have offended the young lady, but Peter urges him to drink the chamomile tea to calm his mind, promising to return before it gets cold. Peter leaves the room and walks into the corridor. He remarks that the hospitality is lacking, noting that the tea was served at 75 degrees Celsius rather than the ideal 60 degrees. Numerous armed men surround him. One mocks the protagonist for holding 2 small paper shakers as weapons and orders him to surrender the chairman. Peter calmly tells them they do not understand the situation and invites them to attack, promising to show them how vicious the shakers can be. One of the men laughs and mocks Peter, asking if a mere bodyguard truly believes he can take on 10 skilled marksmen at once, while another man comments on how much guts he has. The gunmen study Peter in silence. Because they cannot see anyone backing him up, they wonder what his plan is when he is armed with nothing but 2 paper shakers. They convince themselves that he is bluffing and trying to intimidate them with a psychological trick, a tactic they have seen many times before. Even so, they feel that there is something different about him. Peter slowly walks toward them, and the men feel as though he is looking straight through them, though they cannot understand how he is doing it. He explains that anyone who puts all their faith in guns will eventually hit a limit. He tells them he is about to show them that there are times when even the cap of a paper shaker can be far more powerful than any bullet. The gunmen cannot believe what they see because Peter shows absolutely no fear of being shot. Instead of retreating, he charges directly into the middle of their circle. He strikes each man in the temple one after another without missing a single blow, leaving them wondering if he is even human. As the protagonist moves through the group, he thinks to himself that his little pirate friends cannot pull the trigger for a simple reason. Because they have surrounded him from every direction, each of them knows there is a chance he could dodge, and if they fire, they risk shooting one another. That hesitation prevents them from acting. Frustrated, one gunman yells for everyone to shoot, though another hesitates. A second man shouts again to fire, but Peter quietly remarks that the real show is just beginning. He tosses the contents of the paper shakers into the air, and the powder flies straight into the gunman's eyes. One man cries out that he cannot see, and another shouts that they have lost sight of the protagonist. Before the man can react, Peter appears directly in front of him. He tells him that it is a shame because if they had been using close-range weapons instead of guns, they might have survived a few seconds longer, and now they are going to miss the real highlight of the night. Elsewhere on the ship, a subordinate rushes to Sword Phantom with an urgent report regarding the team sent to Chairman Choi's room. When she asks if they are dead and receives confirmation, she realizes every professional she selected has been eliminated. She concludes that Chairman Choi must have been hiding that old man the entire time. Before she can process this, another subordinate reports that Peter has appeared at the restaurant. She is confused because he should have been in the chairman's room. Suddenly, reports begin pouring in from every direction. Peter is spotted in the control room, the headquarters, the swimming pool, the engine room, the casino, and the swimming lobby. She wonders how he can be in all those places at once and what kind of trick he is playing. She angrily orders her subordinate to find out what is going on and to get moving to identify who is wreaking havoc on her ship. The subordinate immediately acknowledges the order. Meanwhile, the Dachko brothers watch the chaos and think everyone is doing a great job, knowing nobody realizes this is all part of Peter's plan. They recall how he had asked them if they knew why people on the ship were called VIPs. They had jokingly called them very important paychecks before correcting themselves to very important people, and the protagonist had explained that these people were in danger. After he reminded them that Sword Phantom had been dragging away and disappearing the bodyguards of VIPs, it became clear she was planning to kill every VIP on the ship. Shocked by this revelation, the brothers were assigned a special A-rank mission. Peter instructed them to roam the ship as custodians and spread a rumor that the shipmaster was planning to kill all the VIPs. While cleaning, they pretended to have a private conversation loud enough for nearby VIPs to overhear, expressing worry about exposing the plan to their master. The overheard VIPs immediately gathered their bodyguards. After a gunshot echoed through the ship, causing the crew to panic and believe the rumors of the shipmaster's betrayal, they began shouting that an old man was fighting the crew to ensure everyone believed Peter was truly on board. Back in the present, a subordinate warns Sword Phantom that the situation is spiraling because the VIPs refuse to trust them. She flies into a rage, striking the man and cursing Peter as a disgusting mole, vowing to tear him apart. When her companion volunteers to bring the protagonist to her, she forbids him from being hasty. She explains that like a mole living underground, Peter will only appear somewhere else if she tries to dig him out. She insists on handling it herself, reminding her companion of their promise and her capabilities. She picks up the pot of rock and decides that if she wants to catch a mole, she only needs to blow up the ground. She declares that they will kill them all along with 200,000 people. Peter realizes she is actually going to detonate the pot of rock. Looking around, he sees people already collapsing with blood coming from their noses and mouths as they inhale the gas. He realizes he does not have enough time to reach the control room and that he must get everyone on the ship above ground immediately or everyone, including the innocent passengers and his comrades, will die. Watching the devastation, the protagonist thinks to himself that Sword Phantom does not understand he has been through situations like this countless times in his life. The pot of rock emerges as the Soviet Union's most lethal invention, a substance capable of slaughtering thousands with only a few drops. This instrument of mass destruction has been unleashed upon the ghost crews. Peter considers the horrific symptoms of this poison, which include hair turning white, bleeding eyes, blood-filled coughing, and inevitable death. He recognizes that the true dread of the pot of rock lies in the absolute hysteria it triggers among the passengers. It cascades through the casino lobby, hallways, and swimming pool like the opening of Hell's Gates. As people reach their breaking points, they lose all capacity for rational thought. Peter understands that he must drive the terrified crowd up to the deck to ensure their survival. He considers using the emergency alarm and the ship's public announcement system as the fastest way to mobilize everyone, but he remembers a critical flaw. The ghost cruise lacks any such equipment. He cannot traverse the entire vessel shouting instructions, and he is further burdened by the fact that Simon remains unconscious and vulnerable. Meanwhile, the panicked mob continues to sprint through the corridors, screaming in terror as they perceive the gas closing in. Peter tries to navigate the throng but realizes the situation is deteriorating, and his only path back to his room is blocked by the endless crush of people. Just as he wonders what to do, Chairman Choi shouts for the crowd to stop their frantic pushing. Peter turns to see the chairman carrying an unconscious Simon on his back. When the leader notices him, he calls out, and our boy urges him to find the safest possible location while he takes responsibility for Simon. Chairman Choi refuses, explaining that the Daiha group achieved greatness because they never abandon what they have claimed as their own, a principle that extends to their friends. He tells Peter to focus on his own mission and leave Simon in his care. Watching the chairman, Peter reflects on the surprising nature of life and the way people eventually mature into dependable adults. Peter agrees to trust him with Simon and promises to return. The older man warns him against heading toward the poison, but Peter continues to run forward without hesitation. Chairman Choi watches, struck by the feeling that Peter is a man capable of creating miracles, a sensation he recalls experiencing with him long ago. Elsewhere, an orchestra plays while the subordinates of the Sword Phantom scream in terror. She celebrates what she considers her total victory, imagining that Peter, the VIPs, and the Spiral Swordmaster have already been dissolved by the gas, leaving nothing but corpses for her boss to find. Suddenly, the ship begins to groan and crack as its structural integrity fails. Simon stares in shock as the vessel starts to tilt, and the villain demands to know why the ship is moving. 5 minutes earlier, Peter infiltrated the control room after neutralizing the guards. He accessed the system in administrator mode, overriding the auto-control and assessing the blast tank compartments. As he input the commands, he knew that emptying these massive, water-filled tanks, which keep a large ship balanced, would force the vessel to tilt immediately. Since there were no alarms to guide the passengers, Peter chose to create an undeniable physical reality that would force everyone toward the surface. As the manual command executed and the first tank opened, the sudden shift in the ship's balance triggered widespread alarm, causing the passengers to scream that the ship was sinking. Peter continues with his plan, knowing the heavy gas will settle toward the lower decks, buying him time to confront the Sword Phantom. Meanwhile, in the lobby, a man directs a group of survivors toward the deck, promising safety. Their hope is interrupted when onlookers see 2 crew members murdering a passenger. When asked for an escape route, the murderous crewmen laugh, having locked the doors and mocking the wealthy passengers for believing their status matters in the face of death. Suddenly, the door shatters under a powerful blow. Junior Daiko stands amidst the debris, noting that the door put up a fight against his fist. The crowd celebrates their rescue by the cleaning brothers, while the chairman and others look on with gratitude. Above, a subordinate alerts the Sword Phantom that Peter is likely at the auction area. She decides to confront him personally to finish him off. Before departing, she selects a specialized perfume from her collection, searching for a scent that is unforgettable. She dismisses one for being too sweet and settles on the one she previously used on the Spiral Swordmaster. She believes this intoxicating fragrance will force Peter to endure terrifying visions, ensuring he cannot escape his fate. Upon arriving at the auction area with her companion, the Sword Phantom sees Peter and Chairman Choi, but she becomes confused when she spots someone else. She demands to know where the Real Peter is, dismissing the man before her as a little rat. Peter calmly tests a microphone and announces the commencement of the Ghost Cruiser's final auction. He presents a new item, which he reveals is actually a fake apostle of the Glory Club, the villain herself. Although she orders him to stay silent, Peter continues, listing her various titles, including Captain of the Phantom Squad and the Glory Justice Faith Sword. He opens the bidding at 10 cents. The Sword Phantom draws a blade in a rage, but Peter coolly lowers the price to 5 cents, then 3, 2, and finally 1. When no one bids, he mocks her value, offering to pay $0.00 to take her off their hands. As the infuriated woman prepares to attack, Peter interrupts to ask if she truly believed she suppressed the legendary mastery of the Spiral Swordmaster that night. Declaring that she still has much to learn, Peter draws his own sword and invites her to witness the peak of the authentic Spiral Swordmaster technique. The Sword Phantom dismisses the protagonist as a joke, and her companion agrees, noting that our boy looks like a mere high school student who could not possibly replicate such a technique. Even so, the associate feels uneasy, sensing that Peter possesses the skill of a true master and represents a genuine threat. The ally advises her to let him make the first move, but she insists he is getting carried away and tells him not to interfere. The comrade looks at her, knowing she will not listen to him. The Sword Phantom declares she has something to show the protagonist, promising to demonstrate exactly how she chops up little rats like him. Her companion recognizes the look on her face. It is the same expression she wore the day she murdered 2,000 men. He recalls how a millennium-old killer organization was destroyed in a single day due to a betrayal by a Yakuza gang. Her young master had sought revenge, and from that moment, she poured everything into her training until the day arrived. A muscular man mocks the Katoryu members, saying he has heard old men claim their victims never even realize they have been slashed, as if they were killed by a ghost. He scoffs at the idea, noting that nobody uses swords in an age of advanced technology, and while he is unsure of their speed, he doubts they are faster than a gun. He recognizes the Sword Phantom as the chief's daughter because she looks just like her mother, and he invites her to come closer so he can see if the resemblance extends further. Furious, the Sword Phantom calls him disgusting. She explains that while people believe their victims never realize they were cut, she ensures her victims are fully aware of the moment they are about to be struck. The man laughs at the brat, tells her she must have a death wish, and fires his gun. He is baffled to suddenly find himself lying on the ground. The Sword Phantom reminds him she stated her victims know exactly when they are being slashed. Her companion notes that on that night, she faced 2,000 members of the Yamato gang, and every one of them was brutally cut down. In the present, the Sword Phantom asks Peter how he wants to die, offering him the choice. The protagonist watches as she removes her shoes, assuming she is reducing her weight to maximize her speed. He wonders if speed alone is enough to earn the title of apostle. She warns him that planning is useless because he is going to die regardless. She explains that the title of Sword Phantom is passed down to the greatest sword master of each generation, and she has prepared a technique specifically for him, one that not even the Spiral Sword Master witnessed. Peter realizes she has disappeared, and understands that the bandages on her feet are designed to reduce friction and increase her movement speed. He finds her unbelievably fast and notes that she also possesses immense physical strength. She explains that people make the mistake of believing speed equates to a lack of power, noting that those who think so always die by her sword. Peter observes that she is not using her speed merely to move, but is channeling the recoil from that speed to generate physical power far beyond her own weight. Shock waves ripple from their colliding blades. She tells him he missed. Her companion initially thinks he was worried for nothing, as our boy is being forced entirely onto the defensive and cannot counterattack. Still, the ally notes that Peter shows no signs of exhaustion or surrender. When the Sword Phantom demands to see the Spiral Swordmaster's technique, the protagonist notes she is leaving after images that make it feel like he is fighting multiple opponents. The companion realizes Peter is not merely unable to counterattack, but perhaps chooses not to. He senses something is wrong and tries to intervene, but the Sword Phantom kicks him away, again telling him not to get in her way. The protagonist asks if she is getting tired from fighting alone and suggests it is time for help. She calls him arrogant, but Peter retorts that her technique does not hold a candle to the Spiral Swordmaster. He mocks the 5 millennium history of the Katoryu if this is all it amounts to. Enraged, she tells him to try and dodge her next attack. As they continue, Peter remembers a conversation with Simon, who had admitted that after gaining experience, he realized how many people were stronger than him. The mentor had asked if Peter thought he could become the greatest swordsman, and the protagonist had internally acknowledged that Simon was already among the strongest, having created a technique no one else dared to attempt, the Spiral Slash. Peter unleashes the technique. He explains to the shocked Sword Phantom that he stopped her because every time she launched herself, she had to push off from a specific point, revealing her path. All he had to do was place his sword in that path. Her severed arm falls to the ground and she screams in disbelief. Her companion rushes to her side, and she orders him to detonate the perfume immediately. The protagonist admits she was stronger and faster than he expected, but asserts that she was destined to lose to the Spiral Swordmaster from the start. Consumed by rage, she glares at him and swears she will kill him. The perfume is detonated and spreads through the area. Peter covers his mouth and nose, recognizing the scent. The Sword Phantom tells him not to struggle because now that the perfume is released, they are already as good as dead. She mockingly asks if he thinks the Apostle Peter can save him, declaring that even the legendary Peter cannot stop what is about to happen. The hallucination perfume permeates the entire space, leaving no room for escape. Sword Phantom laughs, relishing the sight of her opponents growing dizzy. She mocks our hero, Peter, telling him his flashy tricks are useless. Kajao warns that he will suffer the same fate as the old man, becoming completely impaired and vulnerable. Peter considers his options, briefly wondering if he should punch through the wall and dive into the ocean to flee. Sword Phantom immediately dismisses this fantasy, telling our boy he is going to die right there. She taunts him, explaining that even if he were to come to her rescue, the moment he breathes in the perfume, they would both end up flopping on the floor like fish out of water. Peter wraps his tie around his sword. Sword Phantom's companion notices that the protagonist is not stumbling from the perfume and wonders what he is doing to his weapon. Peter holds his breath, and Sword Phantom notices, asking how long he expects to keep that up since the perfume has already saturated the entire area. Our boy repeats that the perfume has made escape impossible, and she confirms he is exactly right. The protagonist calmly replies that he has been waiting the whole time for her to say those words. Her companion suddenly realizes something is wrong. Peter ignites his lighter, setting the tie wrapped around his sword on fire. He explains that he knew she felt invincible because of her secret weapon, but the protagonist intends to show her exactly how vulnerable that choice made her. Sword Phantom stares at him in shock. Her accomplice realizes the perfume is highly combustible and understands that our boy can easily set it off. He wonders how Peter figured out its properties, suddenly remembering an earlier moment when the protagonist must have discovered the secret. Sword Phantom dismisses it as another one of his ridiculous tricks. Holding her sword in her remaining hand, the assassin tells him that a little campfire will not save him. She insists the entire place is covered in her perfume and dares him to see how far his tiny flame gets him before he starts hallucinating. Peter says he is glad she understands. The enemy stares in disbelief, wondering how this is possible. Our boy declares that he is going to set the entire place ablaze. He swings his burning sword, and flames spread throughout the area. Sword Phantom shouts in shock, questioning why the entire floor is catching fire. Her companion realizes that Peter planned this from the very beginning. He recalls that the protagonist spent the fight knocking wine bottles onto the floor not to scatter glass as a hindrance, but to coat the floor in alcohol. Sword Phantom angrily calls our boy a little brat and charges at him. Peter observes that she has lost her left arm, which is essential for balance. Her movements are slower and weaker, and our boy realizes she has finally reached her limit. The protagonist notes that he did not expect things to end this way, but he believes it was the right decision, as her rising blood pressure would have eventually caused her to burst a blood vessel. Sword Phantom's companion strikes her hard on the back of the neck, knocking her unconscious. Peter asks if he is his next opponent. Instead, the accomplice picks her up, tells our boy he has made a mistake, and quickly escapes. The lobby is shown engulfed in flames as the partner carries her away. The companion recalls a conversation with his boss, who asked if he wanted to return the girl. He had replied in the affirmative, explaining that they would return home once the job was finished. The superior had remarked on the interest of them returning to Japan. The boss had stood up, looked over, and asked what the associate planned to do upon returning, specifically if he intended to revive Kataru or form a new organization. The leader had noted that the people of Kataru keep many secrets, which he found interesting. Back on the cruise ship, Peter walks up the stairs surrounded by flames. He thinks that while things went according to plan, more questions remain. The protagonist realizes the ties between Kataru and these events run deep. He remembers a phone conversation with Jaiwon while they were traveling to the ship. She had explained that the leader became head of Kataru at a young age, taking down thousands with a small body, yet the ally could not understand how she became the new Simon. Our boy had asked for clarification, and she explained that apostles were chosen from agents trained at the Yongguang orphanage. The colleague noted that their skills were irreplaceable, and that they were considered more dangerous than nuclear weapons. She questioned why Sword Phantom, who she found inferior to the previous Simon in every aspect, was chosen for the role. The informant suspected something was going on, and wondered how this girl received a free pass. Remembering this, Peter realizes Jaewon was right. He thinks back to her staring at the computer, confused by the data. Outside on the deck, our boy stands among the fire and wonders why someone would live in the shadow of Sword Phantom. The protagonist asks his opponent if he agrees. Kajio. From the flames, the companion emerges. It is revealed that this man is the true Apostle Simon, a member of the Japanese killer organization Katoru, and a subordinate to their leader. As they face each other, Kajio tells him that he has been taught that in this industry, the curious die early. Peter agrees it is helpful advice. Our boy realizes he has no information on how this man fights, unlike his previous battle with Nathaniel. The protagonist has no way to predict the man's moves, but he can see that despite his support role, he possesses an unnatural level of power. Kajio asks if Peter is just Chairman Choi's bodyguard, and questions his true identity and relations. Our boy says he would love to provide the details. While studying Kajio, the protagonist decides he needs to uncover the truth about this man. He moves toward the opponent, ready to fight, and repeats that in this industry, the curious die early. The fight between Peter and Kajio begins with our boy immediately struggling to read his opponent. The protagonist initially wonders if Kajio trained in karate, but he quickly dismisses the idea because the man's stance bears no resemblance to that discipline. As our boy has never encountered this fighting style before, he begins to suspect that Kajio is hiding something significant. He considers the possibility that Kajio is utilizing a secret Kataru technique, yet he feels this cannot be the case. The way he leaves himself wide open, keeping his vital points completely undefended, is entirely contrary to proper technique. This lack of defense, paired with such a mysterious stance, confuses Peter. He moves with an innate talent that makes it seem as though he was never taught how to fight at all, but was instead born for combat. Our boy realizes that this moment feels less like a structured fight and more like the raw, instinctive violence of a beast. Although the protagonist should have been able to land multiple clean hits, Kajio dodges every attempt with his unorthodox movements. Peter recognizes that he does not spend time in battle making tactical decisions. He simply possesses an innate, natural-born ability to fight. This realization brings even more questions for our boy. He cannot understand how Kajio possesses such high-level combat talent while simultaneously lacking any specific, refined techniques for attacking. The protagonist observes the man's mysterious flexibility, his swift, unreadable footwork, and his undefined style, eventually arriving at a sudden understanding. As they slide back across the roof, Kajio acknowledges that Peter is strong, but he considers that to be the extent of his opponent's ability. He decides he will not need to reveal his hidden power here. Our boy tells Kajio that he is too clumsy, noting that while he possesses raw skill, his offense and defense are highly inefficient. Peter asks if Kajio has never been taught how to fight, then corrects himself, realizing that more accurately, he was never allowed to learn. Simon is shocked and wonders how the protagonist deduced this. Our boy expresses his bewilderment, noting that Kajio is powerful enough to be a force on his own, yet he has spent his entire life remaining in the shadow of the Sword Phantom. The protagonist wonders what has kept him suppressed for so long and asks if Team 1 has finished their mission. A memory surfaces in Kajio's mind. The chief of Katoryu asks if Team 1 has completed their mission, and a subordinate confirms they have. The scene shifts to the real Katoryu, where the 23rd chief resides. His subordinate mentions that Team 1, led by a young lady, managed to take down the powerful second Oryu. The chief remarks that his people deserve a better life than that. He explains that the true way of Katoryu is to strike a victim before they even realize it, questioning if this was actually done by his people. The chief decides this is not the way of Katoryu, describing the aftermath as the work of an untamed beast, similar to the marks left by an animal taking revenge on its prey. When the subordinate clarifies that this was not the work of their team, the chief asks what he means. The subordinate explains that no other organization was involved either, and that the mission was simply too difficult for Team 1. Kajio, identified as Apostle Kajio, had handled the task entirely on his own. Later, the chief discusses him with his subordinate at his home. The chief admits that Kajio possesses a great, albeit dangerous, talent, noting that he is the only one left of the second Oryu bloodline. He reflects that out of everyone he has seen in his life, Simon is truly born to kill. When the subordinate suggests they should quietly eliminate him to prevent information leaks, the chief asks how much he knows about fleas. He explains that while fleas can jump many times their own size, a flea trapped in a jar for a long time will stop jumping higher than the lid, having learned to accept that height as its limit. The chief admits that he has trapped Kajio like that flea, ensuring that no matter how hard the boy tries to jump, he will never surpass his master. Simon, standing outside the room, hears these words. Back in the present, Peter tells Kajio that he has clearly lived his life being suppressed and cannot function without his master. Kajio tells our boy that he is doomed. The protagonist replies that Kajio is doing a disservice to his master's words. Tired of the talk, he moves toward Peter, telling him he speaks far too much. Our boy asks what is wrong with their conversation, and as they fight, he finds himself increasingly amazed. Every reckless, creative move Kajio makes suggests that he never needed formal training. The protagonist believes Kajio has always felt confident he could win regardless of the opponent, using his instincts to project the killing intent of a true predator. However, Peter remains convinced that he is hiding something. After they trade attacks and slide backward, Kajio observes that Peter has been consistently targeting his legs. He realizes that our boy is setting a trap to immobilize him, remembering that the protagonist used similar tactics against the Sword Phantom. Simon decides to use this to his advantage. He plans to pretend to fall for the trap, baiting Peter into lowering his guard so he can rip his head off. Suddenly, he realizes something is wrong. Our boy has disappeared. A large chain wraps around Kajio's neck, hoisting him upward. As he struggles, he realizes he is in trouble, and wonders when the protagonist set the trap. Peter explains that Kajio's innate instinct and natural skill are impressive, but because he watched him fight the Sword Phantom, he was far too alert. By luring Kajio into thinking and strategizing, something he never had to do before, our boy caught him off guard. The protagonist tells him it is over, claiming that even a chainsaw could not break the chains. Kajio refuses to accept defeat. Blades suddenly emerge from his hands, which he uses to try and cut through the chain. Peter notices the claws and tells him to give up, but as he watches the struggle, he realizes this is what Kajio has been hiding all along. Our boy recalls seeing something similar during the auction, where Kajio was able to melt another human. He concludes that these blades can melt anything they touch, making it dangerous to get close. The protagonist realizes the situation has become much more difficult. Kajio moves toward him, stating that it is too late, and that now that his ability is revealed, Peter is doomed to disappear without a trace. He grabs our boy's face with his hand. Kajio initially assumes that even the slightest thought of combat will be enough to finish Peter. However, the antagonist quickly notices something unusual when our boy charges directly at him and grabs his wrist. Because the protagonist could have easily dodged the movement, he wonders why he would intentionally place himself in danger, instead of choosing to run. He soon realizes that Peter is merely pretending to be hit, specifically to get a closer look at the palm of his hand. He tells him that such tactics will not help, and that he is going to die regardless of his efforts. The protagonist slides back and jumps away to regain his distance. He realizes that Kajio intentionally cut his own palm to use those claws for combat. But more importantly, our boy identifies that the real mystery is the strange liquid bleeding from the opponent's hand. As they face each other again, Peter asks what is inside the blood, noting that it appears capable of melting everything from metal to flesh. He expresses confusion over how human blood could possess such destructive properties. Kajio dismisses the question, telling the protagonist that he will have to defeat him first if he wants to find out, meaning he will never get the answer. Kajio charges, and Peter notes that his opponent has become significantly faster and stronger, with his true power manifesting through those claws. Our boy realizes the fight will be difficult because of the unique blood. He cannot find a way to get close enough to launch an attack. As Kajio strikes from multiple directions, the protagonist manages to grab his wrist again. Recognizing the situation, Peter mentions that there is only one group known to possess this type of blood. He admits he is surprised because he believed they had gone extinct long ago. Our boy asks if Kajio is one of them and speaks the name Dokuryuryu. Kajio is shocked that Peter knows this history. The protagonist explains that all descendants of the Dokuryuryu were thought to have died out and asks how he survived. In the past, a chief stood with his subordinate after they eliminated their targets, officially declaring the Dokuryuryu extinct. When the subordinate asks what to do about the remaining items, the chief discovers large wooden containers holding children submerged in liquid. The subordinate explains that every baby in the organization has died except for one and asks if they should finish the job. The chief finds it interesting that the child survived all their previous killings and decides that keeping at least one alive would not hurt. This event marked the beginning of Kajio's feud with Kadaru. It is revealed that the surviving child was Kajio. He spent his time in Kadaru, among other children, training in combat. During a session, the child defeats all his peers with ease. When one child complains that his leg is burning, It becomes clear that his leg is dead, and others call for a doctor. While someone asks the boy why he went so far in a simple sparring match, he insists he did nothing. The chief watches and observes that for generations, the Doka Yuryu had taken in people with poison resistance, feeding them lethal toxins to increase the acidity of their blood. He realizes this process was intended to create a special breed of poison warrior with innate battle talent. The chief concludes that if left alone, the child will reach an incredible level of power and decides to keep him alive. As time passes, an instructor teaches the children to kill with one strike, emphasizing that the way of Kataru is to slash victims before they even realize it. Kajio watches from the outside, realizing that the blood in his veins makes him different, causing others to fear and avoid him. After an instructor strikes him and tells him to clean up, the child practices alone. He wonders why he was born this way and why everyone hates him. While training, he strikes a tree until it falls. As it hits the ground, he finds a bird and tries to return it to its family, but realizes with horror that the bird melts in his hand. Understanding that anything touching his blood will be destroyed, the boy decides that since he is doomed to be alone and hated, he might as well make everyone fear him. Back in the present, Kajio tells Peter that Kataru eradicated his clan, asking why our boy would serve them when he could have restored his own. The protagonist remains stoic, telling him to stop talking because he does not know him. When our boy asks who Simon really is, he speculates that if the protagonist is associated with Apostle Peter, he must be part of Glory. He notes that Peter possesses sword skills that rival his master's, wondering why he has never heard of him. Our boy reiterates that he will have to win to find out, then lands a powerful kick on Kajio's chin. The protagonist realizes that even though he did not use his full power, the kick did nothing. Kajio recognizes a catch-22, as he cannot win unless he makes the blood non-poisonous. Kajio attacks with a powerful strike, sending Peter crashing through a wall. As our boy gets up, he notices some cleaning equipment nearby. The enemy breaks through the wall and tells the protagonist to give up, offering him a painless death if he is angry. Kajio demands to know where Apostle Peter is. The protagonist brushes the dust off his shoulder, remarking that his opponent is impressive and likely has never come close to being defeated. When Peter tells him to come at him, the enemy is surprised and asks if he is joking since his life is in danger. Our boy insists he is there for a serious fight and picks up a mop. Kajio asks if he has given up, but the protagonist explains that he is going to use his secret weapon. The enemy insists that whether the combat is long range or close range, Peter has no chance of winning. Our boy concedes that he might be right, but notes that he does not realize just how dangerous the fight is about to become now that he has the mop. Kajio asks Peter if he chose a weapon for long-range combat. Our protagonist tells him he will find out soon enough. The opponent notes that a wooden stick is useless against his reach, but Peter remains confident. Although he cannot quite grasp what his opponent plans to do with a simple mop, he knows our protagonist is always thinking several steps ahead. Peter calls out, mentioning that waiting around is becoming boring. Kajio looks at Peter and realizes he cannot get close because the mop is being used to control the distance. The attacker decides he must endure the attacks to close the gap. He is not afraid of injury, believing that one successful strike will end the fight. Suddenly, he finds his claws entangled in the mop fibers. Peter triumphantly tells him that he is trapped and should give up. Kajio dismisses this as a joke and slices through the wooden mop. He tells Peter that such a weak trap cannot stop his full power, and he charges forward, breaking through the debris. The fighter admits he underestimated our hero, noting that Peter has more to offer than simple tricks. Peter explains that the true issue is that Kajio is actually underestimating his abilities. His rival demands to know what he means, feeling annoyed by Peter's words, and he moves to silence him once and for all. However, the adversary is suddenly surprised. While Peter stands firm, Kajio collapses to the ground. He asks what is happening, wondering if he somehow tripped on the mop debris. As he spins around, he notices his arms are failing him. Peter explains that he possesses a lethal, dangerous weapon, which is why he avoids close combat. He reveals that Kajio's poisonous blood has a fatal weakness. When the acidic blood meets a highly alkaline chemical, a reaction occurs that renders the acid useless. As the mop was treated with these chemicals, the trap effectively neutralized the enemy's primary weapon. Kajio tries to rise, realizing that the mop was a ruse to get the chemicals into his bloodstream. He clenches his fist, insisting that he does not need his blood to win. Suddenly, the voice of the sword phantom rings out. She declares that she will kill Peter. Kajio calls her master, but Peter warns her to leave if she values her life. Ignoring him, she insists that she will kill him with her own hands and behead him. As she speaks, her sword slips from her grasp. Her companion calls out, asking why she left the safety of the ship when he told her to wait. She says she has had enough. Kajio notes that she is only injuring herself further, but she maintains that she must kill Peter to capture the apostle, reminding him of their promise to run away together once everything is over. Kajio insists that she should have left it to him, but she refuses, claiming she can handle it herself. She asks him to simply follow her. As she calls his name, she collapses. Kajio rushes to her, pleading for her to wake up. This moment triggers a memory of his past, back when he yearned for the outside world. He realized that if he had left those gates, he would have avoided the bullying and abuse he suffered. However, he stayed for one reason, her. He remembers a young sword phantom running toward him with flowers, excitedly showing him how beautiful and fragrant they were. He realized then that the scent of those flowers washed away his bitterness and loneliness, bridging the gap between their different social standings. When he told her she should not stay close to him, she laughed and said she would hug him as much as she wanted. Soon, a subordinate arrived to escort her away, and for his interaction with her, Kajio was beaten by the chief, who called him an atrocious monster and a lowly, vile creature. He reflects on how they were forbidden from interacting, whether because of his cursed blood or her royal status, creating a divide he could never cross. While the chief trained her to inherit the Kitoryu title, Kajio remained a shadow lurking in the background, which he felt was enough. Years later, on her birthday, the maid celebrated her with expensive gifts, including a perfume sent by the Fujiwara household. Outside, Kajio held his own much cheaper perfume, having trained himself to forget his feelings because he knew she deserved better. Everything changed when the Yamato Gumi attacked, releasing a deadly gas. The loyal protector hid the sword phantom and carried her away as the chaos unfolded. After the incident, she became a different person, training obsessively. Despite his pleas for her to rest, she pushed herself to the brink of sickness, seeking revenge. They eventually spent years in a cave, and after she sharpened her skills, they made 2,000 members of the gang disappear. With no home left, they discussed going to a deserted island. She imagined a life there but worried about the heat. Kajio promised that he would be the shadow that covered her. Returning to the present, he looks at the sword phantom in his arms. He notices the perfume bottle he bought her so long ago. She reveals that she kept it for 10 years, never wanting to waste a drop, but now she wants to use it. When he tells her it has expired, he sprays it on himself instead. She says it smells wonderful, and thanks him for always protecting her. She apologizes for not being able to keep their promise to run away and bids him farewell. As she kisses him, he realizes she has come into contact with his poisonous blood. He begs her to spit it out, but she believes this is the best ending, hoping it will allow him to live. With tears in his eyes, he begs her not to leave as she passes away in his embrace. Holding the body of Sword Phantom in his arms, Kajio declares that he will gladly fulfill her final wish and remain true to the promise he made to her. As he embraces her, he resolves to finish this conflict for her sake. He vows to stand his ground, make her proud, and eliminate both the man before him and Peter. Kajio then tears his chest open with his claws to reopen his wounds and launches himself directly at our boy to resume their fight. Peter recognizes that this is far more than a simple battle for his opponent. The protagonist understands that Kajio is attacking with everything he has, willing to destroy his own body in the process. Realizing that he is prepared to die, Peter considers that even minor contact with such lethal, tainted blood could be fatal, forcing him to question how he can possibly defend himself. When Kajio notices our boy picking up fire extinguishers, he initially suspects a smokescreen, but soon realizes that Peter intends to use them to stop his bleeding. Kajio reflects on how all his previous opponents met pathetic ends in despair, regardless of their skill or preparation. He assumes Peter must be feeling the same way, but the protagonist suddenly grabs him and slams him into the deck with such force that the wood shatters. Dust fills the air as he coughs from the impact. Lying on the broken floor, Simon deduces that if this man is connected to our boy and Glory, he must be at least an A-rank killer or even an apostle. He realizes he has no information on this stranger and concludes that it no longer matters because he has no reason to live if he survives. He tells Peter to finish him. Peter asks if Kajio ever wondered why the Yamato Gumi attacked the Kitoryu. After he expresses his confusion, our boy suggests he imagined that Glory orchestrated the entire event. The protagonist explains that 10 years ago, Glory's boss sought to recruit new apostles and fixated on the Kitoryu, which had ruled the assassination world for a millennium. When the chief of the Kitoryu rejected the offer, Glory's boss vowed to make the organization his own by forcing them into a position where they had no choice but to submit. The first phase involved manipulating the Yamato Gumi to eradicate the Kitoryu. That night, the organization was wiped out, and every step Kajio and Sword Phantom took afterward followed the path intended by Glory. After they wandered aimlessly following their revenge, Glory approached them with the offer to become apostles, ultimately obtaining exactly what it wanted. Kajio refuses to accept this, insisting that Peter is lying, but the protagonist tells him to ask his boss, Raphael. This name causes Kajio to freeze, triggering a memory of when his boss offered him the title of Apostle Simon. He had refused, stating he lived only to serve Sword Phantom. The boss then proposed giving the title to her so he could continue serving her without betrayal. Back in the present, Kajio struggles with the possibility that their lives were manipulated from the start. He feels a deep sense of regret, realizing that if Glory had never intervened, Sword Phantom could have lived a different life. Overwhelmed with rage, he wonders how the man responsible can sleep peacefully. Noticing Kajio is pushing past his physical limits, Peter warns him that this overexertion will lead to his death. He counters by warning our boy that his friends are in grave danger from pirates, and that the cruise ship is sinking. He tells Peter to leave if he wants to save them. At the evacuation area, the Daku brothers are urging passengers toward the lifeboats when armed pirates arrive. The Daku brothers ask for the crowd to stop, and command their men to fire on the boats. Panic ensues. Junior asks Biggie for a plan, but the brother realizes that with too many enemies and only 2 of them capable of fighting, any attempt to intervene will result in everyone dying. Biggie encourages his brother not to lose courage, and Junior responds that they should be saying the same to each other. The pirates grow cautious, recognizing the brothers are skilled and threaten to shoot at any sign of movement. Chairman Choi attempts to negotiate, offering an astronomical amount of money for their lives, but the pirates refuse, stating they will not be fooled again, and that they only want his head. Seeing no hope for peace, Biggie tells Junior he has been the best brother, and he replies that they will meet again in heaven. On the deck, Kajio demands to know why Peter remains instead of leaving to save his friends. The protagonist calmly explains that a glory killer is already among them. Kajio argues that even a killer cannot survive a barrage of bullets, but Peter notes that there are extraordinary individuals on board. Simon realizes who he means. The scene shifts back to the evacuation area, where every gun held by the pirates is suddenly sliced in half. Standing among them is the Spiral Swordmaster Simon, who has regained consciousness. Despite having only one arm, he cut through the firearms with incredible speed, leaving the Dako brothers, the chairman, and the pirates stunned. The pirates realize he is alive and decide to maintain their distance to gain the advantage. Simon lets out a quiet sigh as he remembers a conversation with Peter years ago. Our boy had asked about the worst-case scenario for a swordsman, eventually asking what the teacher would do if he lost an arm. Simon initially joked about killing himself, then suggested he would open a noodle shop. Later, Peter had intentionally broken his own arm to force himself to train with only one. Simon had told him that while logic dictates a swordsman needs 2 hands, he intended to surpass those limits and perfect a new spiral sword technique. Back in the present, the Spiral Swordmaster swings his sword with his remaining arm and unleashes a powerful left-handed spiral slash. As the technique tears through everything before him, he proudly declares that he has perfected his new move just as he promised Peter he would. Once the chaos settles, Peter confirms that everyone aboard the ship has escaped safely. The Ghost Cruise is destroyed, which successfully wipes out the second base of glory. On the yacht, the Dako brothers stand before the Spiral Swordmaster, Simon, with visible reverence. They introduce themselves as Biggie and Junior, expressing their disbelief at meeting an actual apostle in person. The brothers have long dreamed of achieving greatness like him, and the reality of the encounter leaves them stunned. Simon offers a modest, awkward smile, suggesting they do not need to make such a scene, but the protagonist quietly leans in and tells him to simply play along. The brothers continue their praise, with Biggie noting that Simon's swordsmanship is peerless, and Junior adding that the techniques they witnessed were breathtaking. The Spiral Swordmaster playfully asks if that is how he is truly perceived, and our boy whispers for him to keep up the act. When the brothers ask if he has ever met the legendary Peter, repeating rumors about his ability to destroy entire cities, Simon laughs at the exaggeration. He jokes that moving mountains is more in line with Peter's capabilities. The brothers find this hilarious, leading our boy to quietly reflect on the fact that they never seem to laugh at his own jokes. Simon then puts his arms around the brothers and claims he recently spoke to Peter about them. The brothers are electrified, desperate to know what was said. The Spiral Swordmaster winks at Peter before telling them that the protagonist believes they have the potential to become apostles themselves. The brothers erupt in cheers for their hero. Shortly after, Chairman Choi approaches Peter, who insists he is fine despite the chairman's suggestion that he should rest. The businessman declines a break for himself, explaining that his life in the weapons industry has required him to build significant stamina to survive. Simon interjects to warn the chairman that assisting them will make him a target of Glory's suspicion, but Chairman Choi remains calm, noting that Glory still believes he is away on business. Peter gazes out at the sea, contemplating the situation. Out of thousands of islands in Korea, Yo, Illinois is among the most isolated, yet Glory tracked Simon there with ease. Our boy realizes Glory must have known about their alliance all along. He concludes that while Raphael is undoubtedly furious over his latest humiliation, this is only the beginning of a much larger conflict. Later, at Ji-won's house, she greets Simon with a mix of affection and biting insults, teasing him for looking old and smelling like a man past his prime. The spiral swordmaster reminds her of the days when she used to chase him, calling him more handsome than any movie star, but the blind woman dismisses it as a thing of the past. When he playfully cries out that her teasing is physically painful, she points out the absurdity of his claims since she is only patting his back. The mood shifts when Simon asks what Raphael is truly planning, citing the recurring schemes at Yeonggwang Hospital and the Ghost Cruise. When he asks if Peter and Ji-won are ganging up on him, the host explains that Raphael's ultimate goal is the total elimination of Peter and everything he represents. The narrative shifts back to 2013 at Yeonggwang Cathedral, where the former apostles gather before Father Gabriel. An apostle reports that they have finally achieved independence and brought peace to the nation, acknowledging the sacrifice of the many children buried under the tombstones. Father Gabriel addresses them with deep affection, granting all 12 apostles their official retirement. The priest encourages them to leave their violent past behind and experience the outside world. Raphael, Father Gabriel's right-hand man and the leader of Glory, vehemently opposes this. He cannot understand why his father would discard such powerful assets. The priest explains that the apostles are not weapons, but his beloved children, and that the world no longer requires their service. He orders Raphael to leave, but the rejection fuels the young man's frustration. Believing his father has been compromised or changed, the leader of Glory punches a statue until it collapses. He decides that the Lord's will is his own, and he takes control. He establishes the Glory Club, using the orphanage reputation to build a global killer organization. To succeed, he determines he must eliminate the original apostles who serve as the foundation of the industry, with Peter standing as his primary obstacle. In the present, Ji-won is fuming, her blood boiling at the mention of Raphael. She demands to know why Peter brought a new apostle into her home. They look over to find Kajio sleeping on the bed. Our boy pulls a frustrated Ji-won away, telling her to keep her voice down. They wonder what to do when Kajio wakes, and Peter assures them the target will not be hostile. Simon jokes that he will not be hostile toward the hostile either, earning an annoyed glare from the woman. When they realize Kajio is already awake, Ji-won prepares to kill him, despite Peter questioning her confidence in a fight while she is blind. Simon offers to protect her, but she insults his one-armed status. When they enter the room, they find it empty. Kajio has disappeared despite his injuries and the heavy tranquilizer. The protagonist calmly states he is not worried because he knows exactly where the injured man has gone. At Raphael's headquarters, the leader sits with his new apostles, frustrated that they still know nothing of Peter's true identity, despite his involvement in recent events. The new recruits bicker among themselves, mocking each other's focus on fitness over combat skills and trading threats. Raphael eventually demands silence, reminding them they are the world's strongest. Suddenly the door is smashed open. Kajio walks in. Raphael is stunned to see him alive and asks about Peter. The intruder ignores the pleasantries and asks a direct question. Is it Raphael who orchestrated the destruction of the Katoryu? Kajio recalls how Sword Phantom had trusted the leader, unaware that he was the one who destroyed her life. The villain does not deny it, but argues that it is unfair to blame him. He tells Kajio that Sword Phantom brought her fate upon herself by choosing to become an apostle. The warrior, who had desperately hoped for a different truth, clenches his fists. He stands before the apostles and gives them a 10-second warning to leave the room or die. Raphael tells Kajio that he fails to grasp the reality of the situation. The former points out that none of the apostles show any intention of leaving, which makes his opponent's stance futile. One of the apostles scoffs at Kajio for making such a scene, reminding him that he was nothing more than a struggler before rising to his current position. The gun wielder agrees, calling the man's behavior unpleasant and demanding he get over it. Another apostle urges the group to go easy on him, noting that the former member fought hard to get where he is and suggests they settle their nerves over a cup of tea. However, one member immediately refuses, declaring he will not share a drink with someone so disgusting who smells of blood. Kajio realizes he is trapped and, accepting his fate, vows that even if he is buried tonight, he will take all of them down with him. As our boy advances, an apostle attacks, warning the target to stay quiet because his arrogance is becoming intolerable. Kajio tells John to enjoy his laughter while he can, warning him that a single drop of his blood is enough to kill him. The assassin acknowledges the potency of his opponent's blood, but remains unfazed, claiming that the target will never manage to get a single drop on him. Kajio prepares to strike, noticing that John is focused entirely on avoiding contact with his blood. Seeing this distraction, the protagonist attempts to attack from a blind spot. The assassin moves quickly and lands an attack, believing he has eliminated his opponent. Kajio realizes he only survived because the enemy had been positioned behind him, and our boy notices that the attacker used a shield to block the counterattack. Meanwhile, Kajio realizes he has lost too much blood and reached his limit. Our boy determines he must retreat to recover so he can eventually fight them again for the sake of the sword phantom. As the warrior leaves through a broken window, one apostle assumes their bullying scared him off, but John insists they cannot let a traitor escape and should hunt him down. Raphael stops them, noting that Kajio is merely emotional and that they will surely meet him again. As Kajio vanishes, Raphael remains troubled, wondering how the escapee knew about the secret meeting between Bob and Peter. Since the rogue has no connection to Nathaniel, the strategist concludes that Peter must have a powerful accomplice providing him with resources. Raphael turns his attention to the chairman of the Deja group, who had been rumored to be on the cruise despite showing no prior interest. Recalling that the chairman had avoided a meeting by claiming to be on a business trip, the masterminding apostle suspects the man is assisting Peter. Deciding the timing is perfect, Raphael notes that he needs a new weapon warehouse and sets his sights on the Deja group. Raphael tasks John with the hit, reminding him that since he successfully killed Father Gabriel, eliminating Chairman Choi should be simple. When the killer expresses confidence despite the elite security, his commander recognizes his readiness and orders him to proceed. Elsewhere, Jaiwon, Peter, and Simon watch the news, which reports a mysterious, panic-inducing graffiti message left on the Deja group building. The technician finds it impossible that an intruder could scale such a tall building, but Jaiwon reveals it is the work of an S-rank assassin and former Pistol Zone member who has come out of retirement. The protagonist confirms that this is the same man who assassinated the Apostle of Honor, a figure known as Alipede. The scene shifts to a heavily guarded room filled with weapons, where a man panics, convinced that Alipede's mark means his death is imminent. Guards and the man known as the former Apostle John arrive to provide protection. The veteran introduces himself, boasting of his age and a perfect success rate in assassination. He suddenly stops, realizing the situation will end sooner than expected because their killer is already standing in the room. John attacks Alipede with a blade, but the assassin blocks it easily. The target notes that it was easy to spot his attacker hiding among the uniforms because of his distinct scent. When guards shout to catch him, the lights go out. In the ensuing darkness, John orders everyone to stay close to their charge, but gunshots begin to ring out. Alipede realizes the commander is using the muzzle flashes to reveal his position and praises his skill. John remains confident in his years of experience, but as he uses night vision to hunt through the silence, he finds he cannot sense the assassin at all. The infrared cameras fail to detect any heat, and Alipede seems to have vanished completely. A knife appears to float in midair as Alipede moves, striking without being felt. John fires blindly into the dark, trying to track the ghost's voice. Back with their group, Simon struggles to understand how an assassin could bypass their advanced camera systems. When the tech expert suggests that someone as skilled as John could not be taken down by a simple attacker, Peter explains that the true terror of Alipede is that he always leaves a mark for his chosen victims. Our boy concludes that if the mark was left, Alipede has already decided that they are his next targets. Simon tells Jaiwon that he does not have much time left and has one final question for her. He waves his hand in front of her face, wondering how she manages to help the protagonist with a computer when she is blind, as he believes using a computer requires sight. She loses her patience and threatens to cut off his other arm if he continues to pester her. She points to her ear and explains that she uses a screen reader to hear everything happening on the monitor. Although he questions why she would even need to look at the screen, she explains that while she lacks sight, her other senses have become significantly sharper. Impressed by her dedication, the former apostle thanks her for the explanation. Jaiwon warns him that once she is finished, she intends to chop one of his fingers into pieces. When Simon jokes that Peter now views her as his sidekick, she smacks him on the back. He cries out about his arm, but she reminds him that she hit his back, not his arm, and sarcastically asks if he is actually the one who is blind. Peter interrupts their bickering and tells them to sit down for a serious discussion. He explains that Raphael will undoubtedly take more drastic actions moving forward, which will endanger them as well as the former apostles. Because the protagonist believes Raphael and his men will actively hunt down and eliminate the previous apostles, our boy asks Simon to locate them first to ensure their safety. Although the brother is not overly worried, trusting in the other apostles' ability to protect themselves, he happily accepts the task and tells Peter to leave it to him. As Simon prepares to leave, he asks if Peter and Jiwon will be fine without him. She explains that because the apostle has been exposed to too many people, it is too dangerous for him to stay, and his sole responsibility is to track down the remaining apostles. Simon shakes our boy's hand and promises to stand by his side before departing. Peter and Jiwon arrive at the Deja Group headquarters to meet Chairman Choi. After the chairman thanks them for coming, the protagonist introduces Jiwon as his longtime friend, while she presents herself as his teacher, legal guardian, and a master hacker. She asks why the chairman chose Peter despite his association with Glory, noting that he could have recruited someone else with his vast influence. Chairman Choi explains that the recent incident solidified his decision. He notes that although our boy is part of Glory, he is the complete opposite of what the organization represents. Furthermore, the executive knew a conflict was inevitable because Raphael, the chairman of Glory Club, had always disliked the relationship between the Daiha Group and Father Gabriel, and he expected an attempt to seize control. Jiwon and Peter advise Chairman Choi to get some rest. As they walk through the corridor, the chairman's assistant explains that he chose Peter after witnessing his skills during the incident with Sangdo Park. However, she warns our boy to be extremely cautious of Alapatai, the world's greatest assassin, who has never failed a mission and is known for brutally killing his targets, including a former apostle named John. The protagonist concludes that operations within the Daiha Group must remain secret because the chairman cannot trust Glory. The assistant mentions that they have recruited Escudo, Europe's top security team, to assist them. Costa, the leader of Escudo's A team, approaches and remarks that Peter seems too young to be a killer for Glory. After accepting that they are partners, the leader tosses a pen to our boy as an introductory gift. The protagonist catches it easily and introduces himself as an ordinary bodyguard. Costa, noting Peter's quick reflexes and sharp tongue, tells him to keep the pen safe and warns him not to get in Escudo's way. Inside the security control center, Jawan monitors the feeds and concludes that it is impossible for Alapatai to enter the building unnoticed due to the massive security presence. She finds it strange that the elite members of Escudo seem so nervous. Some of the guards express their fear, stating that the assassin kills the targets and their protectors alike. Marco, the leader of Escudo's B team, enters and scolds his men for being frightened. He approaches Jawan and makes a flirtatious remark, to which she bluntly asks to be left alone. Peter continues to tease her, but she coldly warns him that if he flirts again, she will show him how to break Escudo's protection. When he jokingly asks her out to dinner, she reminds him that he dislikes Italian food, causing him to instantly change his mind to please her. Marco then rallies his team, reminding them of their reputation as the world's best, before Sanchez informs him that it is time to move out to hunt Alapide. Before leaving, the leader tells Jawan he will be waiting for her answer regarding dinner. Once he is gone, she dismisses him as a complete goofball. Elsewhere, Costa explains to Peter that experience is the most important quality for a bodyguard. The protagonist observes the team's intense attention to detail, yet he feels something is wrong because there is absolutely no evidence of an intruder. He begins to think like Alapide, wondering how he would infiltrate such a secure facility. Our boy realizes there is only one logical way to bypass an airtight system. Suddenly, gunshots ring out on the 36th floor. Costa quickly issues orders for his teams to respond. Peter follows the others to the scene, where a guard discovers a headless corpse. They soon realize the victim is Marco. Costa is stunned, unable to understand how someone entered without being detected, and orders everyone to check on Chairman Choi. Peter explains to Costa that his earlier assumption was wrong. Since there has been no trace of outside entry for 2 days, our boy concludes that Alapide has been inside the building the entire time, disguised as a staff member. Everyone's phones then receive a notification containing a video. The footage shows the hallway in darkness, where Marco is suddenly dragged away by an unseen figure. The protagonist recognizes the attacker as the assassin and realizes he is an exceptionally meticulous and confident opponent. Although Alapide is currently hidden, the video ends with a message written on the victim's face, declaring that no one will leave the building alive and challenging Peter to a duel.